Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, March 24th, 2025. Can you hear me all right in the back of the room? I don't know if we're hearing, I don't know the PA there. Okay, it just came up. All right, very good. Again, calling to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, March 24th, 2025. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Strawn?
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Here.
Councilmember Groff?
Here.
Councilmember Bauer? Here. Mayor Rowe?
Here. And with us at the dais, by way of introductions, we do have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the very end, City Manager Pat Trudgeon, who's on my left at the other end of the dais, and we will be introducing other participants in the meeting as they come up for the various agenda items. Excuse me, it almost sounds like it's a little too loud in the room, would you say? Maybe we can compromise. Now it goes to nothing. All right? Okay. As long as people are hearing all right, that's the key. All right, and just by way of some housekeeping, besides the PA system, just want to let folks know, if you're visiting, that we do have copies of the agenda on the back table under the big clock by the back door. If folks need a copy of the agenda to follow along with the meeting, we do also have one public set of meeting materials. The complete set of materials for this meeting is in a 3-ring binder also on that table, and we would ask that you do not take that with you because that is the public copy. And then also, if you have a cell phone, just want to make sure that you silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. And with those notes, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda this evening is consideration of tonight's agenda. And as always, we'll check first with staff to see if there are any staff requested changes to the agenda this evening. Mr. Trudgeon?
Mr. Mayor, no changes by staff.
All right. We'll check then with city council members to see if council members have any requested changes to the agenda or items that council members may want to remove from the consent agenda for separate consideration. Does not appear to be the case this evening. And then one final check with members of the public on the agenda. We do have, as noted earlier, what we call our consent agenda. That is in section 13 of the agenda this evening. It starts on the bottom of the first page and continues on to the second page. It is administrative type things such as approving our payments, some temporary gambling permit, expenditures over $10,000, and a number of agreements. Normally, these items are taken up as a single motion with a limited opportunity for discussion and input because they're relatively administrative in nature. Also, at the end of the meeting, but if there is anyone here for any of those items in section 13 of our agenda this evening, known as the consent items, this would be the time to let us know. And we can take up that item earlier in the meeting so that you don't have to stay to the very end if you have a question or comment on an item in Section 13. Is there anyone here this evening for an item in our consent agenda in Section 13 of the agenda this evening? It does not appear to be the case. That being said, then, it appears we have an agenda that's intact from any changes, and a motion to approve as presented would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next is our first opportunity this evening for public comment. As we do in each meeting, we start with an opportunity for general public comment on items that are not on this evening's agenda. If you're here for an agenda item this evening with a question or comment, we will have opportunity for members of the public to speak at that time. But we do always, at the start of each meeting, provide an opportunity for general comment on items that are not on this evening's agenda, but either may relate to city business or may be of interest to people in the community. We'll check then, is there anyone here to speak tonight in general public comment under the subjects that I just discussed? Does not appear to be the case. That being said, then we'll move on with our agenda. And the first item after public comment is recognitions and donations. And we have two items in this section of the agenda this evening. The first is our Fair Housing Month proclamation. And that is before us here. I will read the proclamation, and then a motion to approve would be in order from the council. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the month of April marks the anniversary of the passage of the Federal Fair Housing Law of 1968, recognizing that no American should have the right to purchase or rent shelter of choice abridged because of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And whereas equality of opportunity for all is a fundamental policy of this nation and of the city of Roseville. And whereas location where people live has a direct impact on the quality of their health, education, and access to economic opportunities, and whereas historical racial discriminatory housing practices have created racial and economic segregation in communities that have created disparate outcomes in overall quality of life, including access to home ownership, quality education, healthcare, and transportation as a few examples, and whereas economic stability, community health, and human relations in all communities are improved by diversity and integration. And whereas the City of Roseville is committed to promoting housing choices and fostering inclusive communities free from housing discrimination. And whereas the City of Roseville, make sure I'm following here correctly. And whereas the City of Roseville establishes the City of Roseville as an inclusive community committed to fair housing by applying this to its programs and services, and promotes appropriate activities by private and public entities intended to provide or advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of the city. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the city declares April 2025 to be a fair housing month in the City of Roseville.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on that motion. And I do want to note that this is something we do each year. It is part of our effort to demonstrate fair housing as a city entity to our partners at other levels of government who participate in our housing programs at the city, and this is one of the things that we do as evidence of that commitment as outlined in the proclamation. With that, we've got the motion before us. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we have that proclamation approved. The second item under recognitions and donations is related to accepting a donation from the Granite Foundation, and I'll turn it over to Chief Erica Scheider from the Police Department to introduce this item for our consideration this evening. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight we've got the privilege of recognizing a really incredible donation that came from the Granite Foundation, which is led by the Madden family who lives in our community. They have pledged and donated $50,000 to use towards a rescue vehicle, and I'll talk about that in just a couple minutes briefly. Tonight, Tim Madden and his daughter Mallory are here with us. And just a little bit about the history of the Granite Foundation. I look back through records, and I believe it's at least 16 years that they've been making substantial donations to the police department and really just focused on trying to improve public safety. Some of the donations include one of our first search and rescue vehicles. This is before anybody else had one. We had one. GPS tracking devices when they were kind of in their infancy and still being worked out some of the bugs. They were supporting those types of purchases. Our wellness initiative, before we even started our wellness program, they were making donations to get that off the ground. And probably one of the most impactful things that they did is they donated our first drone. They paid for that drone. We were the first agency in the area that started with a drone and quickly found the success, and now just about every one of our partner agencies has one, and we've been able to build that program. I'll just briefly talk about why this rescue vehicle is critical. This really came out of the critical incident review of the 2022 West Wasso incident. As many of you remember, we had one of our officers shot fairly early on, and we didn't have any type of vehicle that could safely go in there that provided any protection. Thankfully, our officer was able to self-evacuate from the area with his partners, but had he not been able to do that, we would have been in a really tough position having no vehicle that could go in and rescue him from that scene. Thankfully, they were able to kind of get out of the hot zone, but even then, our fire trucks and the paramedics were taking rounds. And so we realized with all of the shootings across the country, having a vehicle that can safely go in and rescue victims, not just police officers, anybody that might be at a scene, and either just directly transport them to the hospital or get them to a safe place, was something that we recognized we needed to get. So when they came to us a little bit over a year ago and said, what could we do to help? We talked to them about this rescue vehicle. At that time, our foundation had already pledged to raise some of the money, but it's a really big ask. And this wasn't something that we had budgeted for. They right away stepped up and said, we'll donate $50,000. We've talked to our foundation, who is on track to donate the rest. And just one thing I want to note, this rescue vehicle, it's not a Bearcat. A Bearcat it serves a different purpose. That's a SWAT element that's bringing tactical equipment. This really is a vehicle that can be driven by a firefighter, by a paramedic, by whoever, to go in and evacuate any victims from a hot zone. And that's a zone that firefighters aren't going to be able to go in with their trucks. Paramedics typically are not going to bring their ambulances into that hot zone. So it relies on public safety to be able to get that person to a safe location. So tonight I'm really privileged to be here to recognize the Madden family for their long history of donations, but especially for this really significant donation. And then just one last call for action. The Roseville Police Foundation is going to be having our final fundraiser for this event and hopefully cross the finish line on April 12th. So you'll see things going out on social media. It's from 10 to 2 at Smash Park. So I'll be sending all of you an invite as well. But this will be the final fundraising to really make this a reality. So that is the information and the history. And I know they're both here. I did tell them if they wanted to say a couple words that there would be an opportunity, hopefully.
Would you like to say a few words? Be happy to hear from you.
Absolutely. Your Honor and members of the council, my name is Tim Madden, and this is one of my daughters, Mallory. We've been residents in Roseville for 41 years. All of our children have gone to Roseville area schools, and 2 of my grandchildren, the 14 grandchildren, and 2 are still in school, are residents of Roseville as well. The Granite Foundation was established around 2001, 2002. We've enjoyed some success, and it certainly is a pleasure to donate to compelling needs such as the chief has indicated. But I want to give Granite a shout out because we don't have a website, but Roseville is dear to our hearts. And in our 501c3 mandate, we're allowed not only to give to other nonprofits and city organizations, but also to individuals of need. So in working with Roseville, if you encounter other, or to say, compelling needs, whether it's a bump in the road for an individual or something that is more capital intensive, we'd like for you to keep us in mind. We have a mandate to distribute a certain percentage of our assets a year, and certainly Roseville is not the only or city that we would be looking at or need that we'd be looking at. So we definitely want to let you know that in terms of places in our heart, Roseville comes pretty close to the top. So thank you for your time and your attention.
Well, thank you for being here and for all of the support you provided in the community over the years. We're very grateful for that, and certainly for this donation that you've been generous enough to provide and that we're recognizing this evening. Very
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So maybe there is a resolution.
Right. And I suppose it would be appropriate to ask if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this in favor of or against us accepting this donation this evening. We'll open it up for public comment if there is anyone who wishes to speak. All right, seeing no one then, we do have, as Mr. Trudgeon noted, the resolution in the packet attached to this item, which is a resolution to formally accept the donation as outlined.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Schroeder.
I just want to say thank you. This is just incredible donation, and not just this one, but over the years. So very much appreciate that, and you know, helping us keep this community safe and moving forward. So thank you very much.
Right, and Councilmember Groff is the seconder.
And I would like to reiterate that and just say this is what makes this job really rewarding, to have people like you come forward and support the work. But it also makes it possible when we're dealing with tight budgets to do things that are really good for Roseville that we would have a harder time doing without your support.
Right, other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Strawn.
I did look at your 990, so you may not have a website, but you do have a 990, and it's a pretty impressive list of items that you've choir boosters and everything along the way. But I do think that our housing navigator, Carrie, her ears perked up, and so she'll probably hit you up on the way out because she knows a lot of people and encounters a lot of people who are hitting those bumps in the road. So thank you for your offer, and thank you for your generous donation.
And Councilmember Bauer.
Seconding what my fellow council members stated, thank you for all your donations and work in the community for all these years and being part of it. Lots of innovative donations that have really set Roseville apart and continues to move us forward. Thank you.
All right, and I couldn't add too much. I would just note that this is just another reminder of what makes Roseville a great community, and it's not the five of us sitting up here or whoever happens to be sitting at this dais. It really is the people of the community, and that goes back to the founding of Roseville, really as a village and then as a city. I don't think we would be here as a community in the state that we're in and the place we are without the generosity and the hard work and the dedication to the community of everybody who's come before us, and this is just yet another example, and we appreciate it very much. With that, we have the motion before us to adopt the resolution accepting this donation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that donation is accepted. Thank you again very much. That then brings us to our business items this evening, and our first business item is to hold a public hearing to consider approving a liquor license for Lunds and Byerly's located at 1601 West County Road C. And we have our Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Olson, with us this evening to bring this license application before us. Welcome, Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As the mayor introduced, I don't have much more to add, but under city code, you are required to hold a public hearing in order to consider approval of liquor licenses. And we have received an application from Lunds and Byerly's located at 1601 West County Road C. We do have a representative from the business here that just wanted to provide a little bit of information regarding this license. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Anissa Gerstel, and I represent Lunds and Byerly's. I oversee the wines and spirits area of our company. We have taken what once was that restaurant space in the front of the store and are looking to expand it, lighten it, brighten it, and make it more of a community center with a small bar serving beer and wine. The food provided would be the wonderful deli food with our upgraded hot bar and our lovely soup and salad bar, sushi. All of those foods would service this area. And the part that I'm most excited to share is that part of this area will be able to be cordoned off by a set of sliding glass doors with a nice big fireplace and access to the bar for a meeting space and a community space, a workspace for those who want it. So we're really looking to take what was a wonderful restaurant that went its way and open it up into something that's more welcoming and for everybody to enjoy.
Well, thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you for
being
having
here
us.
this evening. All right, are there questions for the staff or the applicant from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Mr. Gerstel.
My
Just a
pleasure.
curiosity about this community space. Who is it available to? Is there a charge? How would somebody participate in that?
Those are fantastic questions. All of our stores have a community room that's available for the public to use free of charge. Now, I don't believe the intent is to run this any differently than those spaces. We have rooms that have regular bridge groups. We have rooms that have regular volunteer committees. I mean, it runs the gamut of availability and style. To the best of my understanding, that is also the intent here.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
And then, like in Illinois and other places, will you be able to wander the grocery shop with your wine?
That is not the intent.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it is a nicely separated space. I know I'm going to overshare. We did that at our Wayzata location that has since closed. Lunds and Byerly's Kitchen, which I ran, was licensed and set up that way, and nobody utilized it. So we are not seeking for that permissive, fun atmosphere. So it'll be separated.
I do know it is successful in certain places, but maybe not a Minnesota thing.
I think it's a little too different for us. I'm not sure, but fun idea.
Other questions for the applicant or staff? Councilmember Groff.
This is a less fun part to talk about, but we're always concerned about having proper training for people serving alcoholic drinks and checking IDs. And I know you have an excellent reputation, but I just need to repeat that because we have had a big uptick recently in people that have not been complying. So they've been coming here, and that's the last thing we want to see. So make sure your data is up to date.
We certainly will. I actually oversee that part of our liquor stores, and so I have quite a bit of background in this area, and we will have due diligence and training in our POS hardware and software has the ability to scan IDs behind a visual certification. We do both specific learning and development training for our team members who are involved in this space, as well as partner with the MLBA, and we also co-opt their training, and we do that on a hiring basis and then a minimum of a yearly basis for all staff members. So there is quite a bit of thought that goes into that because we too are very cautious in this space, but it is a service we hope to be able to provide.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking to that.
Right, are there any other questions for staff or the applicant at this time? All right, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up for anyone from the public who wishes to comment at this time on this proposed liquor license for Lunds and Byerly's at their location on County Road C. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this license application at this time? Does not appear to be the case. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing then. Move to council consideration. We've got the request before us for the license as outlined in the application materials. I would note that, as is typical, there are certain background checks and things like that that have to be done, and my understanding is that those are either underway or have been completed and certainly would be any contingency of finally awarding the license, even if it's approved this evening. With that, is there a motion from the council on this item?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to approve the license as requested. Discussion on the motion, Councilmember Schroeder.
No, looking forward to having this addition to when I'm shopping the stores. Thank you.
And Councilmember Strawn is the seconder. Other discussion on the motion? I think the only other comment is that I think there's a lot of people in the community that appreciate that space coming back to life and back to use. So that will be a good thing. With that, we've got the motion before us to approve the license as requested. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That license is approved. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And best of luck. All right, that brings us then to another sort of a quasi-business item. We'll be briefly adjourning as the City Council and taking up our role as the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for the City of Roseville for the purpose, what I guess would call a quasi-judicial purpose of considering a appeal of an action by city staff in relation to a property in Roseville. The process will be that we will hear from the staff as to the background on the situation in question. We'll have an opportunity to hear from the appealing party as to the support of their appeal, and we'll not generally have a time limit on that, although I would certainly encourage folks to be brief. As we always encourage ourselves to be brief as well. And then we'll have an opportunity at that point for public comment before then the council, as the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, takes up the question of the appeal. So with that, we'll open this portion of the meeting then with staff. We've got our Community Development Director, Janice Gunlock, and our Building Official, David England, with us this evening to bring this item before us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This item, as stated, is an appeal of staff decision to condemn and revoke the occupancy for the Norwood Inn at 2401 Pryor Avenue. As a means of background, part of the initial city licensing inspections that occurred on October 15th, staff noted numerous violations to state and city code at the facility, including unrepaired damage from a fire that occurred on or about March 3rd of 2024. Staff noted that. Staff presented the inspection report to the property manager on, I believe it was October 18th. Staff did arrange, schedule, and conduct a follow-up inspection on March 3rd of 2025. Staff did note that no corrections at that time had been made to the numerous violations that were noted, including more seriously to me were no corrections initiated or attempted regarding the fire-rated assemblies in 4 of the units that were affected by the fire from March 3rd of 2024. At that point, had a lot of numerous discussions in-house with that on how to best proceed, and it was determined at that time to post the property on March 18th with a condemnation notice and a revocation of occupancy effective today at 4:30 for the vacancy date of the property. Staff did receive an appeal to that notice, and that is what has brought us here. There's a large amount of information in the packet. We can go through that as you wish or however you would wish to proceed, but that's the basic case in front of you.
Right?
Mayor, if we could just add a couple of additional comments. The actual condemnation action is separate from an item later on in your agenda related to the hotel licensing process. We just want to note that it is possible this applicant could make corrections to lift the condemnation notice, but that doesn't necessarily affect the hotel license because the standards are quite a bit different. The actual condemnation proceeding is some of the major life safety standards, whereas the hotel license is a little bit more lengthy of a process. I also want to note Dave has a big stack of materials. I think around 1:32-ish, the hotel manager did stop in with a packet of materials to potentially outline how they've made corrections. We were actually on our way out to the property to conduct an inspection when they came in with this material. So we did page through it and then we went out to the site, but we didn't observe anything that would change the building official's order to post the property not approved for occupancy. In fact, we discovered work that was conducted over the weekend without permits and not compliant to code. So we did want to make sure we noted that. The actual language in the city code related to appeal requires that the applicant has to outline how codes were incorrectly interpreted, how they do not apply, or that the requirements have been adequately satisfied. At the time they filed the application, all they submitted was a completed application. They did not submit any of this additional information. You could say that the materials that were dropped off this afternoon were an attempt to do that, but we don't think that that changes the building official's determination to post the building not approved for occupancy. The only other thing I would note is our staff has posted this building not approved for occupancy at least 2 times in the last 5 years. Both of those situations, they did make the minimum repairs in order to lift the condemnation notice. But that is important history in the sense that the applicant has not shown good faith in the past to make corrections to keep this building up to standard. And the list of violations this time is fairly lengthy in compared to some of the other previous actions. We did provide a resolution that outlines our findings of fact regarding the notice of condemnation. If for some reason you do wish to grant the applicant's appeal and not accept the condemnation, you would have to articulate those findings for the record so the city attorney and I can revise the resolution for your adoption. But the one in your packet is to uphold the staff decision to post the notice of condemnation. That's all we have, but we can certainly address any questions, and I do know the applicant's representatives are here.
All right, thank you. Questions from the council for staff as respect to the case that's before us this evening? All right. Doesn't appear to be any questions from the council. We'll provide an opportunity then for the appealing party to make the case for their appeal and welcome you up to the table here. We just ask that you introduce yourselves for the record and provide your case, and then probably stand for some questions from the council at that point.
Absolutely.
Hello and welcome.
May it please the council, Matt Berner, attorney on behalf of the appellant here. And with me is Percy Poonawalla. He is the owner of Milwaukee 45 Hospitality LLC, as well as SMP Hospitality LLC, And I'll keep my questions or my statements very brief to give Mr. Poonawalla a chance to provide more factual context about what has happened and currently happening at the property. And as mentioned by the folks who were just before us here, there is a means for, or first of all, this we have a hearing on the condemnation portion, and then we have City Council will be taking up the licensing application later as its capacity as City Council. For both of those, not to foreshadow, what we're asking is that the City Council grant both the appeal as well as the license, but subject to certain conditions to complete any and all necessary repairs to the property. And the council does have the authority to do that under the new ordinance, I believe is 317.02 subsection or F subsection 2 and 3 in regard to the license, as well as what we're talking about here as far as to lift the condemnation notice based on past and ongoing corrective action, as noted by city representatives earlier. I did submit, after Percy provided it to me, a summary of the corrective action that's been taken to date and also the current corrective action that is going on as we speak, which includes the action that requires permits, the pulling of permits, things of that nature. So that's what we're asking for, and I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Poonawalla to say whatever needs to be said in regard to the corrective action taken and currently underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, I'm the owner. Just excuse me, I'm a little choked up. So we had received this notice about condemnation on March 18. I was in India at that time and I came back over the weekend. And since that time, I've been in the hotel probably almost throughout the day. As far as I remember, to the best of my knowledge, there was only one time before this that a condemnation notice was stuck, but I may be wrong. We have been owning this hotel since 2007. In 2020, we had a sprinkler system down, and somebody was working on it, and instead of having a fire watch, we were given 5-day notice, but the sprinkler, and that's why the condemnation notice was there, and the sprinkler guy did finish it before the 5-day period ended, but he was working there all the time for that. 2022 and 2023, we have 0 violations from the city of Roseville. 2021, we had 2 pages of violation which were completed, and I have those inspection reports if needed. In 2024 October, they did come out and went through every single room and every single closets and throughout the property and have a very extensive list of doing things. I have been in and out of hospital throughout 2024 in treatment with cancer, and I was on the chemo. And then as I got out in December, I went to pilgrimage, and I spent considerable time in India for last 2 months. So manager was alone in this period when this happened. Because he had good relations with the city in the past, he didn't pay attention to some of the permit things that were needed and did all the things that were related to what we can fix at the hotel. Now, we had about over 480 items on this report. We done about, as of today, we have done more than 450. As of March, most of the things that were related to the rooms that the staff can do by hand, they had finished it, but on March 3rd, when the re-inspection came in, no rooms were inspected. The inspector didn't go in the rooms. They only went through the closets and the general areas. And because some of the permits were missing, they, I guess, wrapped up the inspection. Now, about the permits, every single permit that was mentioned in here, except for the 3 rooms that were damaged by fire, everything else was items that were standing in the hotel for last 20, 30 years. There wasn't anything new that they wanted a permit for. They wanted an electrician to come and check the wires that are in the hallway, but those wires were there before us, and we took the property in 2007. Inspectors have been there since 2016, almost every year after that. They never pointed there was a problem with that. All they had said that these wires don't look outside. Somebody has to come and certify that this is okay. And most of the items related to permits are old items. There was a stove in the employee room where the wiring was done. It's about a 12 to 14 years old item, and they wanted some electrician to come and either certify it or disconnect it. And we have, as of today, we have already done that. The manager earlier in October did not. He thought he will talk to the inspector when he comes back and explain him or question him about whether this is really needed for the permit. These are old items. But he didn't get that opportunity. He thought that he can talk with them and resolve it. And I apologize that I wasn't there and he didn't pay attention. But the moment we realized that how serious it is, we've been working on it every day. And as of today, I can go through the whole inspection report and line by line, and we can discuss what is done and not done. So the fire rooms, the 3 rooms, there were 2 rooms that were really damaged with the fire. One was just damaged with the water. We have already pulled the permit. Our impression was when this happened that as long as we clean up the rooms and not use it, we can fix it later on. And because I was absent most of the time in past few months, they didn't do the new work. Now, we did get the permit from a general contractor, and he did started the work over the weekend. And what he has done and not done is up for discussion, but we were never put on a deadline that we had to fix this room as long as the rooms were unoperational. So that was the misunderstanding, or I am not sure if it was a mistake or misunderstanding. Apart from that, I can go through every other items on the list, and almost all the items related to the plumbing, electrician, and general contraction everything is done. The reason why we didn't pay attention to the plumbing permits also because they wanted us to recap the ice machines. Those ice machines have been there for 20, 25 years. The valves, they don't want us to touch it and let the hold a permit and let a plumber touch it. That's why we left it for them. In normal circumstances, those valves have been in the same position for last 20 years. Those kind of items are there on this list. And as of today, most of them are done. There are few items that they are still working on right now. And there was one item that we wanted to clarify about carbon monoxide smoke detectors. We didn't get a chance to clarify it because as per their own inspection report in 2021, they had specified that we can put carbon monoxide detector on the 2 rooms where the laundry room and the boiler room, and that satisfies the requirement. In this inspection report, they changed that. They wanted it in all the rooms. Well, the code says that it can be within 15 to 25 feet of the rooms that is generating carbon monoxide as long as it's 24 hours monitored, and or you put it in the rooms. And they were fine with it in the past. And this is the only item that we wanted some clarification on, which is on the list. And I can go through the remainder of the items. I want to make sure that the past items that we have already done, by the way, they are all covered under a grandfather clause. It's a very old clause that if the items have been there from some of these items that are listed, like the electrical panel, to change the wood behind the electrical panel, that electrical panel and the wood has been there since the building was built. And we did hire an electrician to change it, but then the inspector said we can just paint over it and be done with it. So we didn't do anything more than that. But some of these items are as old as the building, and there is a grandfather clause where actually, if we go by the code, we don't have to fix them until there is a major repairs, but we are doing it anyway, and most of it is done. There are some items that are not done, and a couple of them related major to that 3 rooms. But the inspector has talked with the general contractor a couple of times. They only gave him a demolition permit. They haven't given him a construction permit and told him to call tomorrow for the construction permit. And that's why he is sitting back on that part. He has done some of the work, cleanup, and we will finish that in 2-3 days. That 3 rooms should not affect our condemnation application. Condemnation is not a punishment. It should be only applied if the building has some real structural issues. And I'm ready to go through it line by line, the whole inspection report, with the inspector or anybody else. There are items, like there are 10 phones that are not operating right now, but phones were never part of it in the past. Nobody in 25 years come and inspected which room phones are working and not working. And nobody is nowadays using a phone. I don't remember if anybody used the phone in the last 2-3 years. They all have cell phones. And the VGA card is missing, and which connects 10 of the rooms. It is damaged, and we couldn't find a match on that Mitel phone system. But it is not any item related to code issue. It was never checked in the past. So there are items like that which may come up and say that this is not done, but they are not code-related items. Sorry. And if you wish, I can go through it. I'm not sure how much time we are allowed and how this works. So I'm requesting that we be given few more days to complete the entire item, and I'm requesting that the inspector walk with us and check all the items so that he can conclude with us that it is all done. And all the permit-related items, the plumbers and electricians are already talking with the inspector and taking the instructions from them. So I am assuming that when they are done, those items will be done. The remainder of the items, the ones that we fix by our hands, we can go through it. Just to give you an example, 75 of those items are related to fire suppression spray when we are putting a wire or a pipe in a sheetrock, the empty space around it. Now, we had used the spray in 2016 and 17, which was, I believe that was recommended by the inspector. I'm not sure. That spray, now, all of a sudden today, it's non-compliant, they're saying, and they have a different spray, which is 4-hour fire-rated spray. And so we are scraping that old spray and putting the new spray. But about 70 to 75 items on there, it just belongs to that. And everywhere it is written that the sheetrock has lost fire ratings. But this was a spray that was never a problem before because we had done so many inspections in the past. So there are items like that, and we are trying to catch up. It's not like we are trying to question anything. We haven't been arrogant about anything. We have been very respectful of the inspector every time, even before when they were coming. And we should not be treated as if there's something that we are lacking to do, and that is why we are here. I mean, we have done everything. He misread the inspection report. He thought that because the fire panels are there for 30 years, why should we take a permit now? The ice machine is in the same valve is there for 20 years. He will talk to the inspector. He didn't pay attention on these things, and that is why the permits were left out. And as I said, I told him all as well that we apologize for the 3 rooms. I have had a very bad last 14 months, and everything we are just trying to put back together. This is our main place of business, and every week is somewhere between $25,000 to $35,000 is income and expense of that hotel. And we cannot survive financially if it is closed, even for a few weeks or few days. It's just not possible. We got 14 employees over there. We depend on this hotel ourselves. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you, and thank you for being here this evening. I want to note, do we have a glass of water we can provide
Yes,
for the
please.
folks at the table? I was just noticing
you.
that we don't have that like we usually have. So we'll make sure we can provide that for you. Are there any questions from the council or the board members for the appellant this evening? Doesn't appear to be the case, so you may not have to answer any questions from us at this time, but there may be issues or questions that come up as our subsequent conversation happens. So we appreciate you being available for that. I did want to note, and I'll check with the board members. There was some material that was provided to the staff this afternoon. I wondered if that was something that the board members would like to have a copy of to consider this evening, and if that would be something that we can get staff to provide to us. I'm not sure. I don't know what the nature of it exactly is, but I want to make sure if there's something that we ought to be considering, that we do have that available before us. Mr. Trudgeon, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the report. It's quite lengthy.
Okay. I mean,
We can certainly print off copies if you're interested.
it would seem that would be appropriate. Member Bauer?
I'll help reference that. Do we know the number of open permits currently at this property? That may help with understanding it.
Okay. I think in terms of questions for the appellant right now, we don't appear to have any. So if you want to just maybe step aside and have a seat in the front row there, be available for questions, then we can do follow up. But we do have a question for staff, so we need to free up a seat or a microphone here.
Councilmember Bauer, in response to your question about number of open permits, we have issued one plumbing permit. We have issued an electrical permit. Yes, just the two. We have a plumbing permit in plan review currently, and we have a commercial alteration permit in plan review currently. The alteration permit is for the corrections to the fire damaged units. As Director Gunlock stated, when we arrived there today, we noted that that work had begun prior to permit issuance, and the work will not be approved. And we've reached out to the contractor to get some follow-up information. But to date, we only have the two permits issued, one for electrical related to the combustible material inside a storage closet behind an electrical panel, and a plumbing permit for a rebuild and a replacement of an RPZ unit in the pool area. They have applied for additional permits, but we have not issued those, as we just got those today.
Thank you.
Right, Councilmember Groff?
And is the contractor licensed in the state?
The contractor that applied for the permit today is a state licensed contractor. That is only for residential work, 1 and 2 family dwellings only. We reached out to that contractor and provided them with the application to obtain a city contractor license and provide their insurance information. We have since issued that. We're going to reach out and discuss it with them because of the work that they've done in relation to work in a commercial facility does not meet the minimum standards for that work.
Follow up?
Then the last question I have is, as far as grandfathering things in, I hear this a lot in real estate too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but codes change, especially over a 25-year period. And my understanding is, if even in a home, but when you have work done, you have to bring it up to what the current code is. Can you speak a little more to that on a commercial level?
Councilmember Graff, you are correct. Once the opportunity is there to make corrections to those code violations, yes, you can leave a unit as it was built and constructed and approved at the time of construction. Once work is done inside that room, alterations to electric, alterations to plumbing, alterations to mechanical and or the building, the structure itself, you have to comply to current code.
Thank you.
And if I could just add to that, the applicant mentioned numerous times the carbon monoxide detectors. That's a requirement that the state passed just last year. So he's correct. We've probably been there every year. The fire department has been there every year. And the fire department's looking at a different set of requirements to pass a fire inspection. Those carbon monoxide detectors were not required then, so it wouldn't have been noted as a violation. But once the state legislature adopted that requirement, that became something that Dave and his staff looked at when they went out for the hotel licensing inspections. And now that is a requirement that they are going to have to meet, and they don't have carbon monoxide detectors in any of the rooms. This inspection report that was referenced multiple times, that's one of the items they note they have not met. They've ordered the carbon monoxide detectors, but they haven't arrived. And in this report, there's over 20 instances of the applicant admitting that they're currently working on it or it isn't done. That's assuming all of the other responses in here are correct, and our staff hasn't had the ability to go through every single line item, but our staff was there today on the fire-specific issues, and none of that's been corrected, and those are the major issues that require the condemnation posting.
Right, Member Strong.
Thank you. Can you give us the dates those permits were pulled, those two permanent permits that you mentioned?
One was today, the one that was issued for the electrical permit. And on the 20th of March was the one plumbing permit that was issued.
Okay. I note in our packet, which I assume the person who's appealing received as well, your inspection, very detailed inspection back in October, so 5 months ago, outlining all these different things. And most all of the items do mention holes in walls. So I would assume that as soon as you have a hole in a wall, then you do kind of open that need for a permit. Is that correct?
Potentially.
Okay.
We do allow for repair and maintenance as they exist. Really, the purpose of the condemnation is the breach in the fire-rated assemblies from the second floor to the third floor, from the third floor into the attic of this facility. The breach into the attic was the most concerning to me because inside that attic there is no fire suppression system, there's no warning notification system, a fire alarm system. Theoretically, should a fire have occurred inside that attic space, it would be my opinion that there would have been no notification prior to a fully engulfed structure. And that was really what alarmed me the most, was that breach from second floor through multiple layers of fire-rated assembly all the way into the attic area of this wood-framed building.
And that was something we observed still exists today.
Could you explain what a fire-related assembly is?
I was
No?
hoping you wouldn't gonna ask me, but yes.
Where's Google?
Yeah, basically every guest room is a box. And in that box, it is constructed in such a way from the floor, the walls, and the ceiling that it resists the passage of fire and smoke for 1 hour. The corridor walls are the same. They allow for any type of fire event, somebody to egress out of that space for approximately 1 hour prior to fire response. That is another area of concern that was to me is a lot of this work, some of this work has been covered and done prior to permitting and inspection. So it may be covered. There's a couple pictures of the third floor from the fire where the fire department had to breach into that corridor wall, which is the fire rated assembly, to locate any fire that still exists and extinguish it. That has since been covered. I can't tell you what it was covered with. And that is really the purpose of the permits and inspections, is to verify that it is reconstructed back to the minimum standard as it was approved when it was built or to current code.
Can you speak to any violations that all of these inoperable door locks? I would think that there's some, also some state requirements. I know that there's, as far as access and, being able to have a lockable door and stuff like that. Under other pieces, I know that I've personally had to had different staff receive BCA approval in order to carry a master key and things like that. And here suddenly there's many rooms that don't have operable locks or doors.
Yep, any guest room is required to have an operable lock. The door itself is a component of that fire-rated assembly. It's required to be self-closing, and it's required to have a gasket that, again, seals out that passage of fire and smoke. So yes, they are all required to
But not
operate.
even beyond security and safety, other items that might be involved outside of the building code itself. But then there's some other elements that maybe the police chief could speak more to, but about the safety, about lockable doors. I know this has come up in Airbnbs and stuff in the last few years, that people need to be able to have a lockable space away from the owners and such.
Yep, and I can't answer in reference, I think what I'm hearing is something maybe closer to the Koskinen law, where
Yeah.
the managers and that are supposed to be backgrounded.
Yep.
I believe that was the intent also with the hotel licensing program, is to make sure all interested parties are backgrounded and placed upon that license for that purpose.
Okay. But if the doors don't lock, clearly people can't guarantee safety.
Correct.
I notice just one other piece in this list back in October, which I'm going to assume was given to all interested parties at the hotel back at that time, that there are windows missing, screens missing. I would be embarrassed if I would demand to get a reimbursement immediately if I were to be operating here. But I do notice that there's some staff that were living in this facility, which is not part of the compliance, and that the owner said, well, they just want to be able to have at least one staff. Can you speak more to where that's at with the people living in the building?
And we have had communications with the manager regarding that. They have asked for that exception, and I have told them that's not in my area to offer or to allow. But I do know that is specifically in the hotel licensing ordinance that it is not allowed. Would not be allowed if they were to get a license.
Do we know if that is still the situation?
My understanding is it is still, someone is still staying there on a permanent basis,
Okay.
staff member.
And just to be clear again, that is not a factor in the condemnation and appeal discussion, but certainly can be considered as part of the licensure, which is a separate action and discussion this evening. I did want to follow up on a couple of items. One is the excuse me, the wall penetrations and the notion of something that was used in the past, thought it was acceptable, but it isn't. Is it that we're observing that what is there is no longer the type of material that should be used, or is it that there are actual visible ability for fire to transfer between the wall or through the wall, regardless of what might have been done in the past?
That is the case. We noted numerous openings through the rated assemblies. What I believe is being referenced on that is we cautioned all hotel operators that when we found all of these penetrations, there were numerous throughout the city, we advised them to make sure the product they intended to use was the correct product for that blocking of passage of air through the rated assembly. I can't really speak to what was put in the past. We wouldn't have known. What our guidance was is make sure the product you're using is listed and labeled for the use that you're intending it for. That answers it.
And then the other thing was in terms of this suggestion that if these rooms are fire damaged and there is the fire rated assembly or whatever it is not repaired properly, that it's okay just to not use the rooms. My understanding is that if there's the ability for a fire in any of those rooms to go up into a different floor or into the attic, even if you're not renting out the rooms, even if you close the doors, there's still an issue, because if a fire does develop, say it's due to something electrical, that passes through the room or something like that, there's nothing preventing that fire from essentially going right up and engulfing the structure. So it's not a question of, well, just don't use them, or, you can fix them later. It sounds like that's a pretty immediate need for the safety of a structure that people are occupying, whether or not the specific rooms are being occupied. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct, and that at our initial inspection in October 15th, we had made that request. At that time, we were told they were working with their insurance company on making repairs to those rooms, and that was, in my opinion, a reasonable request that they were working on it, that these things were ongoing. The March 3rd of this year, 2025, being that it was 1 year past, that was the end of my willingness to go along with that notion that it was soon to be coming.
And then in terms of, you had mentioned that some of the areas that were concerned in terms of the integrity of the fire-rated facility had subsequently been covered, and not in a way that was permitted or inspected, so you don't know what had happened there. So the only way to really know for sure what had happened would be to reopen those spaces and essentially do the work again and make sure it's inspected.
Yep.
Because we just don't otherwise know. And so it sounds to me that the real issue here is that the building as it stands, especially because of the damage to those rooms and the non-repair of especially the integrity of the fire-rated facility of each room, the box of each room, that the structure itself is not a safe place for people to be spending nights and staying as a hotel facility. And that's the reason for the condemnation, in essence.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions from members of the board? Member Strawn.
The applicant did mention that they were not aware of prior dates of condemnation. Do we have those dates available?
January 10th of 2024 is the one I have on record. The previous one to that was in 2020. I don't have the date on that. We didn't use that in our permit software at the time, but I could find those. But I know it was in 2020, first part of the year. That was due to the fire suppression system not being certified at that time. The 2024 item was, we didn't actually condemn the property. We gave them a notice that should their water service be discontinued, that would prevent them from using water for potable reasons, for sanitation, and for fire suppression, that we would be condemning the property and revoking the occupancy at that time.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strawn, we had indicated to the owners for non-payment of their water utility bills of about $46,000, we were going to shut off the water. And so Mr. England's action was, if that water shut off, you cannot occupy. I think we had it scheduled for the council meeting, but prior to the meeting, they came in and paid off that amount at that time in full in January of 2024.
And I seem to recall that as well. Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? All right. Thank you again, staff, for responding to those questions. I will provide the appellant an additional opportunity to speak if there's anything that's come up in the recent discussion and questions that you wanted to address or answer. Feel free to come back up and have an opportunity to do so.
Thank you, council members. So I just want to address some of the things that were discussed earlier. There were no inoperable locks on the property on October 15 or 18 or 20, and there are no inoperable locks today. The reason why it is written inoperable locks on that report is because some of those locks didn't open with the swipe key, and the manager used the hard key. Now, it doesn't mean that the swipe key is not working, but sometimes these keys also malfunction. So a new key may work smarter or faster. Some of the keys may not work with every lock. And when he was walking with the inspector, when he couldn't swipe the key, he used the hard key. Every time he used the hard key, the inspector has written it's inoperable locks. They are not inoperable. They are all in order. They all lock. They all open only with the keys. There are no locks that open by itself. it should have been explained that way. The other thing is about the fire-rated, the hole penetration of the holes that have been written on the inspection report. They are talking about the hole where you can see a daylight where a wire is run through the wall. So like if the hole is like this and the wire is going like this, they consider the part that is showing a daylight. That is what the hole is. It's not a hole that somebody would punch in the citrog or something and you see a hole. They are not talking about those kind of holes. The hole is like there is a hole for the electrical wire to run in. It goes in here, and then there is a gap like this on the side. That is where we had put all the sprays, and some of them may have been spray missings. And again, these are not the wires that we run now. The last wire that we run was in 2017 for the internet. Before that, all the wires that were run that were before that, they were all in the same position. So it is, when somebody talks about a hole, the mindset would go as if there is a hole in the wall like this that we didn't fix. But that's not the case. The other thing I want to talk about is the fire penetration. There is a ceiling in the bathroom of 303, which the inspector has brought this up for condemnation. There is an opening over there, and which we were going to close it by tomorrow. The construction guy only got a demolition permit, and he didn't get the building permit yet. As I said, they have asked him to call tomorrow, because he said the moment I get it, I will close that portion. It is only in the bathroom of the 303 room number. It isn't anywhere else. Now, the only argument that and again, I'm not providing any excuses over here. I am only saying that our financial damage is too much. These are matters that we can fix it in 1 and 2 days if given a chance. They overlooked it, I understand that, but it has also been 4.5 months since the inspector came back. Okay, it's not if it was something that can't stand 2 days, they would have said that on October 15, But it's all we are asking is a few days to finish the job. Related to the open permit, yeah, the electrician did take a permit for the electrical panel, but as I understand, he had permit for he has applied for the permit for the bathroom fence, because he was working on the bathroom fence when the building inspector came today afternoon. So he knows that they are working on that. And I'm not sure whether he has taken the permit or he has taken a permission to work on it until the permit is processed, but there are a lot more items on the permit besides the electrical panel. I think initially he forgot or he missed, and he said he is going to add them onto the permit. So there are quite a few items on those permits, both plumbing and the other one, electrical. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the permit, so I'm not sure how they're dealing or what they're working on. But the only thing I'm mentioning this is because I don't want to create an illusion that we are taking this lightly. I mean, we have every single items we have addressed. I do want to touch base on the carbon monoxide. Again, we didn't get a chance to clarify that with the inspector. We were going to do that today, but we couldn't get a chance to clarify it. The section that they are talking about is the same section that existed 6 years ago. It's just the Minnesota statute, and there was a different statute before that. The language is the same. And I have put that language, I have got the Minnesota statute. There are 2 options for all the dwellers. Either the carbon monoxide should be in all the rooms, or it should be in a room where a carbon monoxide can be generated if that place is 24 hours monitored, which hotels are. So it's only the statute number is changed. The language, if you read from both the sides, it's identical, the same statute. Now we have told them that we will get in all the rooms if necessary, if we don't get a permission for the other thing, but that should not be held against us, because I do know there are other hotels that they have been and they're all in the same situation. And there are hotels right now that they have given time to get carbon monoxide detectors. They don't have it as of today. So we should not be treated differently. If they say that that is the only thing that will satisfy, we'll get it. It's just going to take few days to get that. We are not asking for weeks or months of time for that. There was one more item I kind of forgot. Yeah, about the screens that they mentioned. There was only, I think, couple of screens that were missing. The other 3 or 4 were damaged. And we have had numerous discussions about these screens with the health inspectors and building inspectors in the past. On an average, in a week, we make 15 to 20 screens every week because people punch holes in them. It just pushes off and the screen gets off the corner. And we are continuously on top of it. There are some screens that can also get blown off by the wind and fall down sometimes. And it is not unusual that 2-3 screens would be missing from the window. We continuously monitor and continuously get on it. People go in and out of these hotels all the time. We check in and check out 70, 80 people. There is continuous damage. We try our best to keep up. I just want to make sure that is not held against us. If there are items on the inspection report, I am very happy to go through it. And again, when they mentioned something about the grandfather clause, I don't want to make it look like an excuse that we are falling back on a grandfather clause. I am only trying to say because, as I heard it, that the council should only rule on the codes. And again, I'm saying to be reasonable and not only look at that portion, but even if you look at the codes, the grandfather clause code is very, very simple and very, you can read it and it is, you don't have to misinterpret it. It's very clear that if the building has not been repaired 50% or more, the grandfather clause is applicable. So it is only in a next major renovation that if you are repairing more than 50% of the entire building, that the grandfather clause does not become applicable. We have the statutes, but again, I don't want to make it look as if I'm putting that as an excuse. The only reason I'm doing that is because our manager got caught on a back foot that they've been bringing up the items that have been existing for 20, 30 years, and he didn't pay attention on some of those items. And now when we are trying to catch up for last 5 days, we are not getting enough time. That's why I'm just pointing to that code. Our intention is to clean up the whole report. Our intention is to make sure every item on is there is signed off and done. So I just want to be specific about that.
All right, thank you. Any follow-up questions for the appealing party? All right, thank you again. I appreciate your additional information. Excuse me.
Mayor.
Right, next, before we take up the matter further, I did want to provide an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak to this. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the request for the granting of an appeal in this building condemnation matter? It does not appear to be the case. Councilmember Strawn.
I just wanted to see if the staff had additional comments based on the comments that were made and some of the assertions that were made by the person. It seemed like they maybe had additional comments, or especially about. I noticed in our packet, as well as maybe room locks, it was that doors didn't latch appropriately. So it was more than just whether or not a hotel key didn't work kind of thing. But then as far as holes and other things like that, it seemed like you maybe had some additional comments.
Related to this action, the breaches in the fire rated assembly are significant. Again, they go from floor to attic. That is the main reason for why we are here. And again, those have been attempted to be repaired, as we saw today, but they are not done under any type of approval or permission.
If we could have the overhead camera, we can illustrate with some photos that we took today that these are not small holes.
Can you slide up a little more on the table, if possible?
There you go. Up a little too far.
That helps, okay. And is that the ceiling we're looking at there, or a wall?
This is the ceiling.
This is the ceiling in the second floor unit.
Okay.
So this framing that's real white and new looking is what has been added that we observed today. There is also the replacement of the plumbing venting that was melted due to the fire. This area here is where a bath fan was and the cause of basically the fire. This here is the replaced sheetrock in the ceiling of the third floor unit. This was the original ceiling, and this is where they've patched in next to it. And this is the condition of the wall.
Move that microphone.
Move the microphone, there you go.
Let's try to focus on the mic.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Usually they don't touch
Can we, does that picture
All right.
show the hole that leads up to the attic where it's completely exposed throughout the full span of the building?
No,
I don't know that we.
I don't know that we have one.
Was that in the materials that were in the packet?
No, that would have, this would have been from just today
Oh,
when
okay.
we were out there. We tried to get as best of pictures as we could with the limited, this is another of the second to third floor construction that was undertaken today or observed today.
And is this construction that has a permit pending, or it has a permit in existence?
Pending.
Pending.
Approval. We've reached out to the contractor. We've asked for some further documentation and plans.
Isn't it correct that the permit we have in is only for demolition to investigate the scope of damage and what needs to be done?
I can grab the list. I have the permit.
Yeah. So the work that we observed today had not undergone a plan review. We didn't even know it was happening. I believe that's only the.
They have, actually, the permit they applied for is the renovations of rooms 103 and 203, with no mention to the third floor and the attic separation. Those are just those are the plumbing and the electrical. That's the only one we have on building.
Yeah, demo, framing, and drywall installation.
Yeah.
But there's no plan review.
Yeah. And this is just kind of an example of the work here where we have drywall separating rooms 303 and 301, I believe. Just not really sure what has occurred here. We would like to meet with the contractor on site to find out what their thought was behind this method of creating this separation with what appears to be some type of latex caulk material in between sheetrock. Again, if we would have had the opportunity to discuss it with them and have a plan to go off of, we could have addressed the requirements. But as Director Gunlock stated, there is I thought we had a picture of it, but we do not. There still exists a significant opening from that third floor unit into the attic space, which was, when you review building codes and certain things like fires kind of show you what the reasons are behind what we require. I was able to show Director Gunlock the path the fire takes, the smoke takes, and as it went into that attic and how it found its way up. So it's significant. This was not something that was taken lightly by staff. We had tried to be reasonable, tried to give an allowance for work to be done, but the point now, I'm not sure what's worse, if it was worse before this attempt at correction, or if now it's worse with the attempted correction. Again, not knowing what's been done is really difficult.
And just to understand the full context of the applicant's comments, and then if you read that report that you've just been handed out, there's numerous references to they've corrected the 4-hour rated stop per the building inspector's suggestion. So if you'll see in this photo here, there are numerous issues in this hotel and all of our hotels around town where they've drilled little holes through fire-rated assemblies to do just regular low-voltage wire. That's a violation of the fire code. And the comment in this report and the comments that the applicant referred to is just using the correct fire-rated caulk to fill those holes. That's not what this condemnation proceeding is about. This condemnation proceeding is about these other issues. So we just wanted to make sure the applicant understood that, and the references multiple times in the report per the building inspector's suggestion, that's what he was referring to.
Right. Member Shorter.
I guess a question on if this body goes ahead and does a condemnation, what would it take to reverse that? What would have to happen, and what was the time needed to then be able to reverse that?
We would need what we've asked for from the beginning as a licensed design professional to state and certify that these repairs are correct and that they meet the intent of the original building construction, and the fire-rated assemblies are going to be restored as the building was designed for. Time frame, it could have easily been done within the last 5 months since the first time they were notified of that. I'm not sure how they would get someone to do that and certify this quickly. I mean, speed is not, in our world, what is best always, but we would definitely work with anyone who is proposing the proper fix on this.
And then would it have to come before the council again, or is that something you could just do?
Yep. Any lifting of the, as I revoke the occupancy under my position, I can reinstate it under my position. The reason for this discussion is the appeal of my decision on that.
Okay.
So it's,
I just wanted to clarify
Sure.
that, because it did come as an appeal. I wasn't sure if that added anything different or not. Thank you.
And I did want to clarify, too, you mentioned that the condemnation could be lifted with a plan or with the execution of the plan.
correct, with the execution and the
Okay.
completion
Yeah.
of it.
So
And-
the work has to be completed and inspected and certified as done per the plan, essentially.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And again, only the work related to the fire rate assemblies, not every single item of this 450 item inspection list.
Got it. And
And
so,
that's related to the license.
That's correct, yep.
so the permit requirement specific is to have the permit to do what's necessary to come up with the plan, and then the permits that are necessary to do the work, essentially. Maybe that's all one permit or whatever, but that is the piece that still seems to be missing at this point.
And with this significant fire, we're into several different trades. We're in electrical trades, we're into plumbing, we're into mechanical, and we're into building. They each have to work in concert with each other and under the same plan. When we were on site today, we reminded the electrical contractor of certain requirements that come with the restoration of commercial facilities that they weren't quite aware of and that they were going to look into doing. So again, without that plan, without everybody working off the same information, our concern is that we're going to be doing work without permit, or we're going to be doing improper work that's going to lead to more work, more money, more expense for this property owner just to get to minimum compliance. This is, there's a lot of work being done without proper information here.
It was actually heartbreaking to go there and see how much money they've already put in without permits, and it's wrong. They're throwing good money at bad. And if they would have applied for permits, it would have been a better use of their funds.
Thank you. All right. I think we're probably at a point where we can undertake the question of the appeal on the part of the board, unless there are any other questions from anyone on the board.
Mayor.
Ms. Tierney.
Mayor, if I may just make a suggestion that the photographs that were just shown to the council of the fire-rated assembly concerns, that those be added to the record, and just also that those photographs were all taken today. Is that right? Just so that we have a complete record of what the council was considering.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Excuse, I would like to add something.
Yes, you may. Very briefly.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the pictures that he has shown is for 202 and 203 and 303 room numbers, and the general contractor did not put 103 and 203 knowingly on the permit. He was confused whether the room numbers are 203 and 303 or 103 and 203, so it was a typo. The permit actually is for 203 and 303. I want to stress that this it is our mistake that we didn't fix that ceiling, but it is a portion of ceiling in the bathroom that has been penetrated. We just need few days with the permit to get this right. It should not be a reason to condemn a property. I mean, we have 180 rooms over there, and if the inspector feels that there is any fire-related safety issue, we can shut off the third floor. If there is any safety issue, the concerns are for the third floor. We should not have the first floor and the second floor be cut off from renting. We have contracts with CLCs and trucking companies and all. Our business damage will be too much if we have to stop those drivers and all from coming to us, and they probably will lose them forever. It's not about few days or few weeks. And there is also a code for fire watch, and we can, along with the fire system, we can also do a fire watch, together. I would request that the property please do not shut down the property. The financial damage is very large, and apart from that, a shut down property, you can't recover the business very easily for months to come. And this is a damage which is specific to one room. It is. I'm not minimizing the danger if the inspector says so, but it is only related to the third floor, and I would request that be considered when you're making a decision.
All right. Thank you. All right. We have the action that was taken by staff. We have the appeal and the case that's been made for granting the appeal. And now it's under consideration by the council acting as a Board of Adjustments and Appeals. We do have a draft resolution, which would be if the board chooses to uphold the condemnation action. And certainly if there are items in that resolution that the board wishes to amend, that is something we can also do to either add or subtract or adjust. But we have that as at least a starting point. I would like to open it up to the board for what action the board would like to take this evening. Member Groff.
I would like to move to adopt the resolution provided as attachment 1, denying the appeal and upholding the revocation of the certificate of occupancy, condemnation, and order to vacate the building structures and premises at 2401 Prior Avenue North, effective March 24th, 2025, based on findings stated in the resolution.
Second.
All All right, it's been moved by Member Groff, seconded by Member Strawn, to adopt the resolution upholding the staff action on the condemnation. Discussion on the motion as the maker of the motion, Member Groff.
Part of what a city has a responsibility for is the safety of people that come here, and this is a fire risk. Fires, I've worked in real estate for many years, and fires going up through the roof and into the attic will burn the whole building down. You could have significant loss of life there, not just property. So this is too high a risk, in my opinion, for us to take, even for a few more days. I think we've been more than patient waiting a year for that repair. So that is my take on it.
All right, thank you. Member Strawn is the seconder.
I'd like to concur with Councilmember Groff's statements, then just indicate that there are so many violations that, and we do respect the work of our city staff, and they've been very patient with this process. And I agree that we should have a comprehensive plan on repair if that is to be the case. And so that the owner is aware of what costs also will be involved in getting this to a standard where we would expect it and where we would consider it appropriate for habitation.
All right, other discussion on the motion? I would just add that I would agree with what's already been said. I think, I was just hearing the concern about, contracted lodging with organizations. My thought is, would I want to stay in this hotel with this potential fire issue? And I don't think the answer is yes. And it's unfortunate, certainly. There's no question that there's a financial impact. But we can't, I don't think we can put the financial impact ahead of the potential, as was said, for certainly, loss of property. But, as was noted in the discussion earlier, the fire apparently started in relation to a bathroom fan. I imagine with 180 rooms, there are 180 bathroom fans in that facility. Now, granted, those may be in rooms with fire-rated enclosures that are okay, but that still there could be an issue in one of the rooms that is being under repair at this time. And if something in the wiring of one of those rooms has an issue and a fire develops, as was noted, I think, it's not very much time before there's a really serious issue for everybody in that facility. So I don't think it's a matter of saying, well, you can operate part of it and hopefully things will work out. And I do want to say also that I think this is the type of thing when operating a business that you have to do so in a professional manner, in the sense of doing the work that is required to maintain a business in a community, especially a business that's offering lodging to individuals who are expecting a safe place to stay. And it is concerning that work is being undertaken apparently without the permit in effect. Work is being undertaken that may or may not be adequate for the job. I think, we've had evidence through the process of working with all of the hotels in this community through this licensing process. I don't think anybody had an inspection that didn't have issues. And I think all of the properties that we've considered up to this point have worked hard and pretty quickly to turn those around. And I understand issues of that may be a part of one's personal life, and I wish those weren't the case. And I certainly wish everybody involved well in their life and their conduct of that. But the role of the city is to protect individuals and their life and safety. And when there is the operation of a facility for lodging in our community that has the potential to be a dangerous place for people to stay, I don't think we can allow that to continue to be in operation until the issues are resolved in a workmanlike and appropriate manner. And so I'm supportive of the motion to support the condemnation decision, as unfortunate as it is for everybody involved. And I hope that is the adequate incentive to make sure that things get done properly and done appropriately to bring this facility into the condition that it can once again serve as a place of lodging for people. With that, unless there's any further discussion, we have the motion before us. All those in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution upholding the condemnation decision signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is adopted. And therefore, that appeal is denied. Thank you again, everyone, for being involved in this process this evening. And we certainly hope that the issues can be resolved in a timely manner. With that, I know it's about 7:30. I don't know that the council is in a position to need a break at this point. I think we've just got a few more, hopefully relatively quick agenda items here. So if it's all right with the council, we'll reconvene as the city council and take up our business items. We have a number of related items here this evening, which are hotel license items. The first is item 10A, which is to consider a request for a hotel license for DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel at 2450 Cleveland Avenue. And I believe, Mr. Trudgeon, you're going to introduce this as well as the other hotel license items.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First up is to consider the approval of the hotel license for the DoubleTree by Hilton at 2540 Cleveland Avenue. They have a total of 255 rooms. DoubleTree has applied for a hotel license and has submitted all necessary information to be considered granting of a hotel license. All interested persons associated with the hotel have passed background checks. DoubleTree has been inspected by the city's Community Development and Fire Department, and they have completed all necessary corrections and do not have any outstanding building or fire code issues. DoubleTree by Hilton does not have any outstanding utility bills, taxes, or other charges with the city. In total, DoubleTree has had 78 reactive police calls since January 1st, 2024, and no overdose deaths. The police department has reviewed the calls for service and do not have concerns with granting the hotel license. Therefore, staff does recommend granting of the hotel license to DoubleTree by Hilton at 2540 Cleveland Avenue, and there is a resolution for that approval in your packet.
So moved.
Right, actually, I was just going to double check. Is there a representative of DoubleTree with us this evening that wishes to speak in support of their license application? All right. That being the case, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this item? Seeing that to be the case, I heard a motion, I believe, from Councilmember Bauer.
Correct.
Second.
Second from Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion to approve this license for DoubleTree Hotel? No. All right. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That license is approved. Next is a consideration of the approval of a hotel license for Avid Hotel at 3015 Centerpoint Drive. Mr. Trudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Avid Hotel at 3015 Centerpoint Drive have applied for a hotel license. They have a total of 86 rooms. They have submitted all necessary information and to be considered granting a hotel license. All interested persons with the hotel have passed background checks. The hotel has been inspected by the city's Community Development and Fire Departments and has completed all necessary correction and do not have any outstanding building or fire code issues. Avid Hotel does not have any outstanding utility bills, taxes, or other charges. In total, Avid Hotel has received 31 reactive police calls since January 1st, 2024, and have had no overdose deaths. Police Department has reviewed the calls for service and do not have concerns about granting a hotel license for Avid Hotel. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of the hotel license for Avid Hotel at 3015 Centerpoint Drive, and there's a resolution in your packet for approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions for staff on this requested license? All right, hearing none, is there anyone from the public or a representative of the hotel who wishes to speak in support of the license or in opposition to the license this evening? Does not appear to be the case. Therefore, we'll turn to council consideration. Is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to approve the license for Avid Hotel at 3015 Centerpoint Drive by resolution. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is adopted. That license is approved. Next is consideration of approval of a hotel license for Key Inn at 2550 Cleveland Avenue. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon again to introduce this request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As you mentioned, this is the consideration of the hotel license for Key Inn at 2550 Cleveland Avenue. They have a total of 113 rooms. Key Inn has applied for a hotel license and has submitted all necessary information to be considered, and all interested persons with the hotel have passed background checks. Key Inn has been inspected by the city's Community Development and Fire Department and have completed all necessary corrections and do not have any outstanding building or fire code issues. Key Inn does not have any outstanding utility bills, taxes, or other charges. Since January 1st, 2024, Key Inn has had 180 reactive police calls and 1 overdose death at their hotel. On November 1st, 2022, the Key Inn did enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Roseville Police Department after several fines were imposed under the city's repeat nuisance ordinance. Since that time, the hotel has undergone a change of ownership. Under new ownership, management has taken steps to address the calls for service, and in 2024, there's only been 1 month when Key Inn has had more than 10 nuisance-related calls. Although calls for service remain higher than average for the hotels in the city, the Roseville Police Department recognizes the efforts made by the new ownership and management team to improve the conditions. Based on their cooperation and commitment for addressing the public safety concerns, the police department does not object to granting of a hotel license for Key Inn. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of the hotel license for Key Inn at 2550 Cleveland Avenue, and there's a resolution in your packet to approve that license.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions for staff? Councilmember Strawn.
I know when we discussed a violation of India Palace's liquor license a while back, one of the people had listed the Key Inn as their place of residence. Do we have any indication currently that there are staff members from the building or the restaurant that are living in the Key Inn?
Councilmember Strawn, as my last inspection at the Key Inn, they stated they did have people that resided there. We instructed them that that is no longer going to be allowed per the licensing ordinance, and they said they were taking steps to remove that person from permanent residence in their hotel.
And do we have a timeline for when that will occur?
It would be before April 1st.
Okay, so the permit would go into place April 1st, and thereafter, if there was someone living there, they would be in violation of their permit,
That would be correct.
with consequences potentially up to revocation of it if they didn't comply.
Absolutely.
And just to clarify too, the license requirement is nobody associated with the management of the running of the hotel be residential in the hotel, and therefore, if it's somebody that's related to the restaurant, my understanding would be unless they have a business relationship with the hotel, that would be the limiting factor there.
That is correct. I believe they have to be an interested person in the operation of the hotel.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
On this one also, I just wanted to note, with the memorandum of understanding from 2021, is that open-ended and is that still in effect, or did that have a time frame associated with it? Do we know the answer to that?
To the chief for that.
Chief is thinking.
The memo of understanding that we had with the hotel technically had a 1 year, although we've continued to operate and make sure that they're continuing those efforts. But technically by the MOU, it was 1 year.
1 year.
But
So it's
we've-
no longer in effect,
Correct.
essentially. Oh, legally, officially.
Legally, yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Other questions from council members for staff? Right. Is there a representative of the Key Inn with us this evening who wishes to speak in support of their application? Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in support or opposition to this application for the hotel license for the Key Inn? Not seeing anyone. Council consideration, is there a motion related to the resolution on the license for the Key Inn? Councilmember Groff.
I move to grant a hotel license to Key Inn located at 2550 Cleveland Avenue in Roseville.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer, to adopt the resolution approving the license for the Key Inn. Discussion on that motion?
I think one
Councilmember
thing
Groff.
about this application that was important is that they've been working with the city and working with the police department to correct some issues that have been in place and have been a problem. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the change of ownership and dealing with those items.
Other discussion on the motion? I would concur with those comments, and I do appreciate the efforts of the ownership in that regard, and look forward to that continued positive relationship. If there's no further discussion, we have the motion before us to adopt the resolution approving the license for the hotel at the Key Inn, 2550 Cleveland Avenue. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That license is approved. Next would be a consideration of item 10D, which is consider approval of a hotel license for Motel 6 at 2300 Cleveland Avenue. Mr. Trudgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you mentioned, this is considering approval of the hotel license for Motel 6 at 2300 Cleveland Avenue. They have a total of 113 rooms. Motel 6 has applied for a hotel license and submitted all the necessary information to be considered for the granting of the hotel license, and all interested persons with the hotel have passed background checks. Motel 6 has been inspected by the city's community development and fire departments and have completed just about every necessary correction, and there were several as part of Motel 6 inspections. The outstanding issues are, as you know, the hotel has exterior door access and no internal access to the rooms. It's a 3-story building. The railing on the second and third floor exterior walkways are not secured properly, and in some cases missing, and therefore the railing is not code compliant and poses a danger for public to fall off of. Also, it was noted that there are potential structural deficiencies on the exterior walkway system for the second and third story. While a structural engineer indicated there was no imminent risk of catastrophic walkway failure, there is a need for additional inspection and work to ensure that these walkways are structurally sound. Further detailed assessment would need to be done. A contractor has been secured and a permit issued by the city for the work, and they expect that work to be started shortly. Moving on, Motel 6 does not have any outstanding utility bills, taxes, or other charges. Motel 6 has had 167 reactive police calls and 4 overdose deaths at their hotel. While this call volume is high, higher than average than the hotels in the city, the management of Motel 6 has consistently demonstrated cooperation with the Roseville Police Department during public safety responses and follow-up investigations. Based on the cooperation and ongoing efforts to enhance the security, the Roseville Police Department does not object to the granting of the hotel license. Getting back to the deficiencies listed in the structural engineer's report, staff does recommend, in consideration of that hotel license, approval of the hotel license with the condition that the occupancy is limited to the ground floor, the main ground floor, and occupancy is not allowed on the second and third stories until the work on the railing, as well as the structural engineer's review of the work and any necessary corrections are done. Those rooms on the second and third story cannot be occupied. The entrances up to the second and third stories also need to be barricaded so they cannot be accessed by any member of the public. And we are requesting that this work needs to be done by May 30th. If that is not compliant at the end of May, we will then consider possible action against that license moving forward. So with that condition, those conditions are listed in the resolution. Staff does recommend the hotel license for Motel 6 at 2300 Cleveland Avenue.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions from the council for staff on this requested conditional license approval, I guess is the best way to describe it?
Yes.
Councilmember Strong.
I was curious to know, so clearly there cannot be utilizing the second and third floor of this location. They have until the 1st to vacate those. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at that time, how will they display that this is safe and has met permits and other things to Mr. England or anyone else in the community development department that they're ready to be considered for full utilization? And then will this have to come back for a full review by the council at that time?
So I'll try to answer, and Dave, please feel free. So they have pulled a permit already, and I know Mr. England has talked to the owner and the contractor about the work that's necessary to be done, and then also with the structural engineer. We'll review the structural engineer report. If there needs to be any other work that needs to be done, we'll review that and inspect that, as well as the railings. The way the resolution's listed was once the building official does certify that that work is done, they will then be permitted to utilize the second and third floor rooms and not have to come back to the council for that additional work. If that work is not done by May 30th, then we would initiate some action for a penalty regarding their license. And certainly if they violate any of the conditions, if, for instance, they were to rent out a second or third story room, that would be a substantial violation, and we bring that back to the council for consideration of penalties. My understanding, the Motel 6 ownership has been very involved in discussions throughout the process and understand and appreciate the ability to operate on the main floor and take it very seriously on the second and third floor, and have agreed that they would not rent out those rooms.
Great. Sounds like you're off the hook, Mr. Ely. Other questions for staff? Right, is there a representative of Motel 6 here this evening who wishes to speak in support of their application? Does not appear to be the case. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in support or opposition related to this requested hotel license for the Motel 6? Does not appear to be the case. Is there a motion from the council related to the resolution approving conditionally the license for the Motel 6?
Mayor, I had an additional question.
Right.
Did we enter into a memorandum of understanding with Motel 6 at the same time when we...
I am not sure if we did, and I'll defer to the chief.
Here she comes.
I'm willing to bet that if it's not mentioned in the report, it's probably not the case, but
Well, it was
we'll
briefly
go to the
discussed.
expert.
Sure. We did not enter into an MOU Motel 6 on their own. Has been cooperative with us and has asked for help to drive down their calls for service. So we didn't need to get to a point where we were sitting down doing that. They just did it on their own, recognizing their calls were above the threshold.
Okay. I do think it was discussed as a potential at one point, but it did not have to go into place.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Other questions from the council? All right. Once again, we've got the request before us. Is there a motion related to the resolution on the conditional approval for Motel 6? Member Groff.
I'd make
Second.
Did you motion?
Councilmember Groff
I made the motion.
has made the motion now. Councilmember Schroeder has seconded. Discussion on this motion. Councilmember Groff as the maker.
No, I have some concerns, obviously, about the second and third floor and getting that work done, but I am reassured by Mr. England's following up on that, and we'll need to do our due diligence to make sure that those are safe. From the photos that are here, it is definitely not safe at this time. Someone could lean against that railing and fall. So I appreciate the staff's work on that.
Right. And as the seconder, Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, and I do like that we have the conditions in there and it's very clear, but I also appreciate that they have been working with staff, not just, with our inspector and but also with the police department with this. And so to me, showing that they reached out and want to work also reassures me on this. So, yeah, that's it.
All right. Additional discussion. Councilmember Strawn.
I do appreciate that we have a timeline by which this has to be completed, and I hope they will take that timeline seriously. I feel like we're giving them ample time to make these. I have walked on those walkways, and they are a little treacherous, and they lean weird. So I think that it is good that we have someone working with them who understands, but also, and just to make sure they understand the severity of violating the conditions of this, that we will take it very seriously, that this needs to be upheld and done correctly, and that they abide by the agreement that they have come to with us for this situation.
All right. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Bauer.
Just seconding those thoughts, this council gave adequate, I believe, has given adequate time. We've even extended the timelines by 3 months. These were originally supposed to go in December, and we chose to extend that to Love Hotels. So, again, echoing that, getting these resolved by that date, and it's quite important. I don't know how much leniency this council will have, given the amount of time that has already been allocated to hotels to remedy their issues.
All right. There's no other discussion. We have the motion before us to adopt the resolution giving conditional licensure to the Motel 6 as outlined in the resolution. Discussion, I should say, licensure based upon conditions in the resolution is probably a better way to say it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is adopted. That license is approved. That brings us then to our final hotel license this evening, which is item 7E. Consider approval of a hotel license for the Norwood Inn at 2401 Pryor Avenue. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Trudgeon again to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you mentioned, this is to consider approval of the hotel license for Norwood Inn at 2401 Pryor Avenue. Norwood Inn has applied for a hotel license. The original application was submitted by Milwaukee 45 Hospitality LLC, doing business as Norwood Inn. There's only one interested person that was listed as defined under the ordinance, Mr. Poonawalla. On March 18th, 2025, it was discovered, not by notice by the owner, but by looking at county tax records, that the Norwood Inn is no longer owned by Milwaukee 45 Hospitality. It is now owned by SMP Hospitality. It is unclear to us who makes up that LLC. It could be some of the same people. It may not be. Regardless, we do not have an application for the current owner in hand. Here we have an application from an owner that no longer operates the hotel. In addition, an interested person as defined under the hotel ordinance was not listed. We believe Key Patola is very involved in the management of the hotel. He has been notified several times to put in his background request for as an interested person, but has not to this date. So therefore, we do not have any criminal background check for the manager of the hotel. The Norwood Inn, as you are very familiar with, was inspected by the city's Community Development Department and Fire Department on October 15th, and numerous code violations were found. A follow-up inspection, as noted earlier, March 3rd of this year, found that none of the conditions, or not many of the conditions, if any, were actually addressed. I would note that despite the information that the city received at 1:30 today, it's very difficult to verify what they have said they have done. They made numerous admissions that other work wasn't done. And I'll just note a couple of the more significant ones. There's no CO detectors in the rooms as required under state law. There was a person living on site, and they're requesting to continue to have that person living on site. There's penetrations to the fire-rated assemblies. There's no phones in many rooms. The sprinkler head conditions are rusty and maybe not operable. Plumbing work was done without inspections, and of course, the fire damaged room has not been repaired. That's just a few of the ongoing inspections, all in violation of our hotel licensing code. In addition, as the council just upheld the revocation of the certificate of occupancy and condemnation, that is still in effect. I would note that. Finally, a couple last things I would note that currently they do not have any outstanding utility bills, taxes, or other charges. We have dealt with this hotel many times in the past where they either have paid at the last second and or we've had to certify taxes to the past utility charges to taxes. As I looked last week, there was still a pending charge that we certified in this past fall of $44,959 to the county. My understanding is that as part of that transaction to SMP, that has been now paid to the city as part of the taxes. So there's technically nothing that is owed. Even if it was still down at the county, that's nothing we could do to compel them to pay. They would technically be in compliance, but I just wanted to note that. The Roseville Police Department has responded to 296 calls for service. The Norwood Inn from January 1st to February 19th. They've had a total of 4 overdose deaths at their hotel. Given their continued high volume of calls for service, the lack of improvements in the overall conditions, and the deteriorating state of the hotel, the Roseville Police Department does not recommend Norwood Inn to grant a license. Finally, I would note, and this is also stated in our hotel licensing ordinance, any information about a prior license suspension or revocation. The Norwood Inn in Burnsville did receive notice to shut down by the State Department, Minnesota State Department of Health in 2018. The owner of the Norwood Inn in Burnsville was Mr. Poonawalla, the same owner as is listed in this application. So for all those reasons just mentioned, staff does not recommend approval of the hotel license, and specifically that the applicant for a hotel license, Milwaukee 45 Hospitality, no longer owns Norwood Inn. The city conducted inspections on October 15th, 2024 and March 3rd, 2025, and noticed numerous code violations that have not been corrected to date. The city condemned the Norwood Inn on March 18th, and that appeal has been upheld due to the lack of a correction of the noted code violations. Norwood Inn Burnsville, owned by Percy Poonawalla, who is also the applicant for the Roseville hotel license, was closed down by the state of Minnesota Health Department for various state code violations in December 2018. An interested person, Key Patola, as defined under the hotel licensing ordinance, was not included in the hotel license application, and no criminal background check was conducted on that individual. And then finally, the Norwood Inn exceeded the threshold for repeat nuisance service calls in 3 months since January 2024. All those conditions are outlined in the resolution for your consideration, but as I mentioned, staff is recommending the approval of the resolution, which denies the hotel license for the Norwood Inn.
Great, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there questions from the council for staff? All right. Is there a representative of the Norwood Inn applicant here this evening who wishes to address the application?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Again, Matt Berger on behalf of the applicant, and with me is Percy Poonawalla. And again, I'll try to keep my comments short and as brief as possible. To the extent I can, I guess I'd incorporate by reference Mr. Poonwalla's comments from earlier, same as mine. I just wanted to highlight a couple things for the council's consideration, if it would please the council. Number one, under the new ordinance, Chapter 317, regarding lodging establishment, just a couple points I'd like to kind of highlight. Number one is under the ordinance, the city council may either approve or deny the applications for a license, or it may delay action for a reasonable period of time as necessary to complete any investigation of the application or the applicant as it deems necessary, etc. It also goes on to say if a license application is denied, the earliest an applicant may reapply is 12 months from the date the license is denied. That's kind of point one. Point number two is, and I mentioned this earlier, I believe it's 317 paragraph F, subdivision 2 and 3, essentially the council may impose reasonable restrictions or waivers in considering a license, an application, and any type of license enforcement or issuing activities. And I understand what is before the city council for what they're to vote on. What I'd like to really emphasize and reiterate is that Mr. Poonawalla has already made many statements to emphasize the financial impact of shutting down the Norwood Inn and Suites, which he owns, for a period of days or weeks. What we would really not like to see happen is that have this license application denied, which I believe was filed on behalf of Milwaukee 45 Hospitality LLC, only then to be stuck with not being able to reapply for a license for 12 months from the date of denial, especially when, given Mr. Poonawalla's statements about doing everything that needs to be done to bring this property to where it needs to be so that it can be uncondemned, if you will, and get a certificate of occupancy back. What really I want to emphasize is whatever action the council takes, we'd like to be in a position where we're not precluded from seeking a license for the next year, given those circumstances. And I'm offering to the council to consider different avenues, which is you can delay action on this application pending, for a reasonable period of time as necessary to complete investigation of the application or the applicant. And as I understand it, there's facts in the record to suggest that the current owner is not the current applicant, number one. Number two, what I heard was something to the effect about a background check not being able to be completed for the property manager. And then number three, I'd like to reiterate, this council has all the authority and the discretion to not only delay passing on this vote or this license application, but also to impose reasonable restrictions, which I would suggest the council consider. Such reasonable restrictions would be along the lines of doing what needs to be done so the property is no longer condemned, and bringing it up to code, and having the building inspector not only approve a plan, but also then approve the work once that plan's been completed. I guess that's a lot of words to say. What we're asking for and pleading for is that we not be shut out for a year to not get a license to operate this property, because it'd be the death knell of the business. And Mr. Poonawalla is here to offer, amplify upon that if you'd like to hear that.
Yeah, so we have not been told why they think that we are not cooperating with the police. I mean, we haven't, I don't know, we have never never refuse anything that they have asked. I am not sure why they are saying that there is a lack of cooperation. And in the past, I had mentioned these police calls. I had asked them for a copy for the past ones because we thought they were wrong. We have never been provided with a copy of the police calls. We have our own copy, and I would like to submit that. Our calls are 112 calls since January 1 till March 19 of this year. January 1, 2024 till March 19. And I would like to submit that if that is okay.
You can provide it to Mr. Trudgeon. Yes.
I have 5 copies here.
All right.
I would have to keep parts. If they have any data that is different, we would want to have it. When we had a meeting in 2022, I even told them, if you want, I can come every quarter and discuss these calls with you if they are heavy. We haven't been fined for any calls. If the calls are 296 and only 3 months we have calls over 10, that means that those 3 months the call has to be like 60 plus or 70 plus each month. There can never be such a fluctuation, and we are recording every time the police comes, and we have never been unwelcoming to them. I am not sure why they say that in the calls. Sorry, this is a summary. This is the summary of the total. The totals are the only ones that are highlighted yellow are the actual police calls. All the other calls are just the police making a round, and our staff just records that because we had been asked about this in the past, and we have also told them that if there are calls, I would like to know. I would like to come and discuss if there is anything that we can do. In the past, we have submitted that what all we are doing for. We have $100 deposit for every guest. We have parking slips. We do not allow any car to get parked over there which does not have a parking slip, and we get it towed. And there are numerous other things that we have done. We don't have we only our call. If you see the calls, the total, it includes the medical emergency and fire and everything. These are not the calls for all the calls for disturbances. And if they had any issue, I mean, nobody has approached us that there is a problem. If they have any issues, they can always call us. I have told them last time we only had one time meeting with them in 2022. I told them that I am available if they want to discuss anything. Our staff is the person that is staying on. The only thing that they had was every time we were not able to get the recording quickly, we have this person, Ricky, on the side. Even at 9 o'clock in the night, if the police comes for a recording, we are giving them because we have a person who has the password now to do that. And I am not sure why their data is so much off from us. In the past, we have had 1 or 2 calls that I seen in the 2022 when we had those 3 months that I had the data. There were calls that police were chasing somebody from the road, and they just stopped by the hotel and they had it on our name. There are calls that one guy was trespassing on the parking lot going from our hotel to Motel 6, and they had police had pulled them off or something. So those calls may not be on our list because our staff may not know it. But other than that, these are all the calls that we have. We record everything, and our staff is very attentive and very cooperative with them. I don't know why they have an opinion that we don't care. I would like that to be clear, So And then there are other things that I would want to say for the other stuff.
All right. You have additional
Should I carry on?
information?
For the unrelated to the police call.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So as I earlier said that we had quite a few hotels in the past. We have slowed down since my sickness, and a lot of hotels are sold. Burnsville, Norwoodin was one of them, and we sold that before an appeal was processed. I'm not sure why that should be any part of this licensing process. I mean, I have had more than 40 hotels since 2004. We have had success in many hotels. We had failed in 3-4 hotels. It should not be held related to this license in any way. I just want to pass on some more thing that is related to the cities where we have held hotels in the past. And I have only picked up Minnesota. We are not collecting these letters from the city anymore, but in the past we collected for our citizenship and all. And I would just like the council to go through that if you don't mind.
All right. Anyone? All right. Did you want to go through this, you said, or just provide it?
No, it's for you. I mean,
Okay. All right.
so it'll be not right to say that we haven't operated hotels in a manner that it should be operated or anything less. We have had problem in the Burnsville hotel, but it had some other issues, and I wasn't an active person operating it. Kumar was operating the hotel. I wasn't involved in it at all. But irrespective, that should not be part of anything. It's just not right. It's the other thing I want to mention about the manager. I had come and personally told I had come to the city and asked them to put my wife's name as the manager. She also is involved in the hotel, and I had explained them what problem Mr. Key has to the staff who was there at the front of the hotel. And they had not raised any objection that time. So if they had, they could communicate with us. I have in the past in 2022 when I spoke with only one time I had opportunity to talk with the chief of police and Mr. Pat Trujan, and I had asked them if they have any questions, if they want me to do anything, they can always call me anytime. If they have a problem with the police calls, they should talk to us. I mean, explain us what data we have, what can we do if there is something that my staff is doing that I don't know. Because I had explained them in some of the cities where they are having these calls, they have quarterly meetings and they are classifying these calls into the seriousness, like they put it in one category, assault and theft and robbery and drugs literature, and another category for medical and fire alarm system or something related to the cash deposit or somebody that we want to leave who is not leaving. They are all in a different category and they focus on the category which is problematic. We are writing all the details over there, but most of these calls, as you can see, we have had in the past, in 2022, I was discussing it, we have had calls that had just missed dial 911 call, and or somebody calling that I lost my wallet, but the police doesn't show up. And those calls were also on those lists when I was discussing with them in the past that that they had over there. And even then, it's not a lot. Yeah. Have you said anything?
All right. Thank you for providing this information and for your testimony this evening in support of your license application. We appreciate that. Are there questions from the council for the applicant? Right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak in support of or opposition to this application this evening? Right. I don't see anyone from the public coming forward. We'll close the opportunity for public comment. We've got the request before us to consider denial of the license request for the Norwood Inn on Pryor Avenue, and we've got a resolution to that effect. Council action, Councilmember Strawn.
Motion to deny license for the next period of time, 12 months, as indicated in the ordinance.
Actually, I did have a question for the applicant. I apologize. So if I may put the motion on hold for just a moment. There's a question about the ownership. And I think we do need to get that clarified because the contention is that we have an application from an entity that is not the current owner, the Milwaukee 4-5 LLC, and that the current ownership apparently, per the tax records, is this SMP Hospitality LLC. Can we get a clarification from the applicant as to what the difference is between those entities and how this relates to this application?
So this application was made in October. We had refinancing done on March 6th or 5th, and that's why the ownership changed during that time of refinancing because the bank wanted an entity. Different entity from Milwaukee 45 Hospitality. I would just like to add on it a little bit that we have a very high. We cannot survive without a hotel license. I don't think we have been given a right opportunity to explain anything. We have never heard from any city manager or the police chief why we are being treated like that or what cooperation they did not get or why our calls are always miscalculated or something that we never know. We cannot survive this financial pressure if our license is denied. It will not benefit the city either. If we have a right to know if somebody has recommended that we be denied just on an opinion, and we have not been presented with any records related to it, or why we should be treated like that. We don't have any opportunity to clarify.
Right. And this is an opportunity to clarify on the question of the ownership. Are the principals of SMP Hospitality LLC the same individuals as the principals of Milwaukee 45 LLC, or is the structure of the LLC any different between the two other than the name? Or I'm trying to understand what the difference is because we certainly want to apply the ordinance fairly and appropriately, but I'm not sure that I can say that I've got information that can help me do that at this point.
No, that is the same. As I said, we refinanced it. The principles are the same.
Okay. But thank you for clarifying that. That was the question. And so I appreciate that clarification. I don't know that I had any other questions, but I did want to make sure I understood that. So thank you for coming back up to answer that question.
Yes, but can I say something?
I just wanted that question answered, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And we did have a motion in progress from Councilmember Strawn. Thank you for your indulgence.
I want to say it correctly. Motion to approve a resolution denying the hotel license for the Norwood Inn.
Second.
Is there, and the second from Councilmember Groff to the motion from Councilmember Strawn, excuse me, adopting the resolution in the packet for denial. Discussion on the motion as the maker of the motion, Councilmember Strawn.
I think we have discussed this amply.
All right, Councilmember Groff as the seconder.
I think that, in my opinion, there's been enough time involved. An application for a license is important. It needs to be filled out correctly. And when you change financing or something, you need to be aware that you need to change those documents for the city. That's part of what owning a business is. So I am voting to deny this.
Other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Bauer.
I would note that recent Minnesota legislature changes allowed cities to perform hotel inspections and licensure, and Roseville being one of the first to do that. We have other cities requesting, and most likely will probably follow what we're doing here. So I would expect, since you're an owner of many hotels, that you will see this happening in other cities as well with increased hotel inspections.
Other discussion on the motion? And I think as to the discussion on the denial of the application, I think I'm willing to sort of give a pass on the ownership question and try to focus on other matters. I still have a question about that. But I think the cumulative effect of code violations, the number of calls, and the same measurement method is used to do the number of calls that has been used for all of the hotels in this process. The same types of calls are counted, and so I'm reasonably confident that that is the case. And as has been noted, there are other hotels with far fewer numbers, and I don't want to suggest that that ownership perhaps isn't concerned about police calls or public safety calls at their facility. But at the same time, certainly a relationship with the city is a two-way street, and that it's not only beholden to the city officials to reach out to the hotel operators. It is also, as was the case with Motel 6 and others, the hotel operators took some initiative in that regard as well. But the public safety part of it and the police calls is just one piece of it. Code violations, a very significant piece of it. Concern about, once again, the ability of people to stay at this facility and do so in a safe manner continues to be a concern. I have a very difficult time granting a license to a currently condemned property for the reasons that we discussed under the condemnation appeal discussion. And so I can't support the granting of a license. And I understand the concern about the financial impacts. I also understand the concern about, well, is there a way to avoid the 12-month reapplication? The letter of the code is what it is. There are probably ways potentially to reorganize or something like that and be able to reapply. And I'm not going to provide advice on a legal basis, because I'm certainly not in any position to do so, or on a financial basis, a business basis, because I'm also not in a position to do so. But the code is there for people to understand and interpret, and for including the city in that regard. For all those reasons, I am supportive of the motion to pass the resolution denying the license for the Norwood Inn. And with that, we have the motion before us. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That resolution is adopted and that license is denied. That brings us to the end of our hotel licenses this evening. We are about 25 minutes after 8, which is our normal break time. Does council want to take about a 5-minute break at this point?
I would like to.
All right, let's do about a 5-minute break. All right, we're back from a short recess here. We've got one more business item to take up this evening, along with a few other matters. The business item 7F is to consider how we might respond to proposed legislation preempting cities on various zoning and land use issues related to housing. And I think City Manager Trudgeon will introduce this item for our consideration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As some of you will recall, this issue regarding substantial changes in state law regarding authorities for cities to regulate development, housing and commercial development has been an issue that's popped up the last couple of sessions. Last year, there were several proposals to really preempt the city from intervening in a lot of land use decisions and kind of granting by right certain standards. At the time last year, the city did discuss it, city council did discuss it, and submitted a letter to our legislative delegation raising general concerns about the preemption, talked about what we have done. One of the reasons, I should back up, one of the reasons some of these changes are supposedly being brought forward is that there is a concern that the structure and regulations of cities limit the ability for affordable housing to be constructed. And there's certainly a need for more affordable housing. As we all know, we've been actually on the forefront of providing affordable housing in the community. In the last few years, we've provided over 700 units of affordable housing, to the point where we felt that we had done quite a lot and wanted to focus on some other things, and that was very purposeful. But the stated goal of these legislation is to try to loosen up the regulations enough so these affordable housing units can happen. But what it really does is takes away a lot of local control. Each city is different and approaches things differently, and I think having a broad elimination of a lot of those things that are important to cities to have a check-in, and doesn't mean those things you wouldn't allow them, but you need to have some local control and have conversations about it. Just a couple of things that this legislation does, and I'll admit I am not up to snuff on everything, but there are several bills going through committee hearings right now. One of the bills is called the Minnesota Starter Home Act, which, among other things, would here's some things that it would do. It would require cities to permit at least 2 units of any single-family zone lot and allow accessory dwelling units on lots with single-family homes. As you know, we do in Roseville do allow duplexes and certain low-zoned single-family home lots, and we also allow for accessory dwelling units. It goes on, though, and says limits minimum lot sizes to 1/8 of an acre for duplexes and single-family homes, prohibit minimum lot sizes for townhomes larger than 1,500 square feet, allow at least 80% of lot coverage, and restrict floor area, ratio, and setbacks, prohibits minimum parking requirements for any development, and require, and I'm not quite sure what this means, require an administrative review approval process for residential developments with no more than 1 public meeting, but it's not a public hearing. So as you know, we often have hearings that folks show up and express their opinion. Sometimes they're lengthy and sometimes they're challenging to get through, but that is part of the process that we have developed, and so apparently this would eliminate that requirement. There's some other bills. I won't go over every single one, but just a couple other things. There are some more limits on setbacks, floor area ratios, lot coverage, and things like that. There was one more I wanted to call out about. Okay, so one, this is the Transforming Main Street Act, and would limit city review on projects under 300 housing units. And that prohibits consideration of traffic, noise, or nuisance concerns as a result of that. So presumably they would just be allowed under some administrative review, I suppose, but not an ability for the city to use any important information as they look at the design and the consideration of that. And then also require all cities to permit multifamily and mixed-use development in any commercial zoning district except for heavy industrial zones. So a lot of this was kind of talked about last year, and it's all kind of mishmashed into some different bills. So the question in front of the council is whether or not we should draft another letter to share with our legislators regarding our concerns. I have included the League of Minnesota Cities draft letter. I think our letter last year was pretty well written. Maybe just tweak that a little bit and show out some concerns. And if we have any specific call outs of things that would be challenging for us under this new legislation, that's always good. I would mention as a note, Councilmember Bauer and Councilmember Schroeder and I were down at the Day at the Hill for the league a few weeks ago, I guess it was. And we did meet with our two senators and express concerns. There was a lot of topics we covered, so we didn't spend a lot of time on it, but the concerns on that. I would also mention that I am scheduled to meet with Representative Godfrey, the newly elected official, on Wednesday, primarily to talk about the Oval funding, but I intend to have a conversation as well on this based on tonight's discussion. So not that we'll have the letter maybe all ready to go, but I can certainly express some of the concerns the council has. So really all this is setting it up for asking the council what they want to do and any input on how that letter should be written. I believe last year there was consensus amongst council, and I think staff and the mayor kind of worked on the final wording of the letter, and we sent it out without having to bring it back for another meeting, another review, just so we can get it down there quickly. But we can do whatever the council would like to say. So with that, I'll quiet and listen and take any direction you have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, actually, last year when we looked at that, we were concerned, and of course, I'm still concerned with this coming forward. And obviously, for our city, we had all our regulations in place, and we still had 700 units of affordable housing go through. So it appears that our regulations aren't the cause of preventing people from having affordable housing in their city, at least ours. And then I also read through a lot of the details, and it just doesn't fit with our city. And looking at the LMC sample letter, because obviously they've been looking at this too and very concerned about this and taking away our ability to figure out what's best for our own city. And with all that said, again, I wanted to say Roseville has stepped up to the plate and has done a lot, I think, already. So I don't think there's any reason we need to be prodded into this by these other regulations that I think could hurt us in other ways. And so my position from last year to this year hasn't changed. I think the letter we wrote was a good one. And I think if we could, even possibly take what some of the LMC sample letter has in there too and maybe put them together, I think that would be a good idea. And if we decide to do write a letter, I think what we did last year was there was a draft letter went out, and then we all looked at it and then did some edits and then moved forward versus having to wait for a council meeting each time. So I would be comfortable with that.
Councilmember Strawn.
Please pardon my ignorance in this area, as you guys, some of you are more versed in this. Is this proposed that every municipality in Minnesota would comply, or just in the metro area? I see most of the
Statewide, I think.
statewide.
Yeah.
And so has there been proposal that any cities would be able to exempt themselves out based on their, if they're a rural area, or so I just think that some of the more affluent cities, if there's any way to get out of it, there might be an opportunity. I would just want to make sure that whatever is decided, I have great respect for many of these authors of this, but I don't know I haven't spoken to them on what the intention is, but I do feel it does go against what we've been so successful in doing and very carefully listening to people. I struggle with where we wouldn't have to have that opportunity for people to share their opinion. And I think a lot of this speaks to that housing needs study and some of the comments that were made in the follow-up to that somehow we're preventing this. But yet I think we've shown time year over year for a few years here that we're producing a high number of entities, of units in this category, even with things as are. So I would very much support our rewriting the letter, or using the same letter as last year. But I would especially want to make sure that it's equitably applied, and that we understand if there was something that was going to happen, because it's like urban municipalities may permit, non-urban, what is the distinction? Cities of the first class may, I just worry that more moneyed environments might find a way to get themselves out of it, and then some more of the first ring or second ring suburbs are burdens more than everyone else with some of these restrictions.
Okay. Councilmember Groff.
I would agree with a lot of those comments. I'm second guessing here a little bit because I do respect many of these people that have signed on to the bill too, but that doesn't mean they understand this at the level that we understand these issues at. What they're probably trying to do is exactly what you're saying, is have affordable housing more equitably distributed, and there are some cities that don't participate, and they put in ordinances to prevent that, and so that's what it's trying to address. But unfortunately, in my opinion, that's kind of a sledgehammer that's not working. You need more of a scalpel approach, and I think Roseville has done an excellent job of addressing these issues, listening to the recommendations of the League of both the League of Minnesota Cities and the Metro League. So I support the letter, and I actually would like our letter to remain more personal. I don't want to put in a generic one from. Right. If there's a couple things to add in, but I read through that letter and I thought it expressed my opinions very clearly. Yes. I thought it was a very well written letter, and you don't want to get them too long either because they probably only read the first and the last paragraph. So those are my thoughts on it. I think Roseville's done a good job of providing housing, and the rest need to step up to the plate, but I don't know that this is the way to do it.
At the same time, I will reach out to one of the co-authors who used to work in homeless housing or transitional housing with myself and express our interests and concerns and see if I can get a better understanding of the intention or what, because often there's maybe not what's written, but a little subtext that we don't know. So I'll reach out to the two co-authors I know very well.
Great. Other thoughts, Councilmember Bauer?
I agree. I think going the route of the personal letter is seconding what my fellow council members have stated previously. I do agree that taking this at the state level and making the decision is probably not the best way. Using your analogy of a scalpel makes more sense. I think making these decisions closer to the people that it affects, that being local government, makes much more sense. And I agree that using the more personal letter, I thought the letter that we had from last year did a very good job of outlining in very clear language what we've been able to accomplish and what this proposed legislation will now allow us to do, making it just an administrative thing. So we would be following on that. This would make budgeting very difficult too, because we would be now reactionary. We would end up with developments or 300-unit facilities and not have water to them or other services. We would just have to react to that, and that is not an ideal way to run the city, and it's not the way that we run Roseville.
Go ahead.
I would just like to share, I spoke with Commissioner McGuire this afternoon, and I do think there's going to be a trickle-down effect of the cuts at the national level to the state and the county and to us. And those are going to take a while for it to hit the city level for us to know what that impact or how great that impact will be. But I'm hoping that there's not a significant decision that is made that we cannot abide by because of our funding sources at that time, or that we would be overly burdensome to our taxpayers. So I think I would hopefully err on the side of a little bit more time while we wait for impacts to be known.
Yeah, I think one of the things that our process has done kind of disproves one of the contentions of the supporters of this legislation, which is the notion that if you let neighbors talk about proposals, they won't happen. And I think what we've found is that actually by having the conversations maybe even before there is a proposal and getting the neighborhoods in the community on board with our plan, that has helped us to have a good plan that has worked in the housing marketplace, has worked for developers, has worked for neighbors by and large. Certainly there will always be people who are concerned about change and express that to city councils around the world, and that won't change. But I think the notion of saying let's make it administrative and let's take the people out of the process is the exact opposite of what our experience proved to be the way to do it. And I think what that does, I think the way the legislature can accomplish things, and I think that was expressed in our letter last year, was it's great to put in place the goals and objectives and the guideposts for communities to try to achieve, but let the communities work with their people and their businesses and their development community in their area to figure out how to make it work for their community. And this is exactly what I ran into a little bit. I'm on the Land Use Advisory Committee at the Met Council, and Met Council is coming up with the proposed system plans for the next round of comprehensive planning, which will be happening in a few years here before we know it. And one of the things that was observed by Met Council staff was that, some of these communities aren't developing at the average units per acre that the Met Council wants and has been asking for years and years and years. So we're going to raise the requirement for everybody, for their units per acre, and that's going to solve the problem. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, okay, this is the same kind of thing. This is saying, communities figuring it out, hasn't worked according to the analysis, and so we need to impose something on them. And I think that really the solution is to help communities figure out what works best for them. And it's not going to be the same model. It's not going to be the same zoning requirements that are in a package that's universal across the whole state that applies to everybody the same. There's a certain amount of equity in that, but there's also still the inequity of not having the ability to even customize solutions for your community or your area based on what your needs are and what you are trying to accomplish. Because I think there's ways to make these win-wins for everybody or for the majority of people and still accomplish the objectives of affordable housing. Once again, as we've demonstrated. So that's why I think our letter last year was actually, with the input of everybody, was very good. Mm-hmm. And if we can make it, appear to be new and fresh to our legislators, or just to say, this is a reminder of what we said last year, and these bills are coming forward, and here's where we stand, and here's why, and what we've accomplished. I think that does make sense.
Yeah,
Sounds
I do like the way our letter starts out with what we've actually accomplished. I think that is a very good, positive way to start a letter, and then explain why, we want to continue down our own path because it works the way we have it. Yeah.
Right. It's not that we're not objecting to it because we don't want to accomplish affordable housing.
Right.
We're objecting to it because you're not letting us do it the way that works for us.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I can see the legislation piece of it because there are municipalities where the not in my backyard is strong. And obviously the sacred settlements are an indication of how they were well received in some communities versus other communities, very litigious and very contentious. But I do think that it's important that things not be mandated, especially an industrial, more of an industrial district isn't going to exist in a small town as much. So then to say that can now have a 10-story building in it, well, that just, Morris, Minnesota, where is that? There's not that. And if it is, it's far away from everything else. That's not where they're going to want to put that. So I think it's somewhat, it doesn't apply. So I appreciate this. But I think we also know that we also have a new representative, and our folks who represent us have had a little bit more time. I think it might be also important to see if maybe Mary Jo McGuire might want to add or support something in our conversation about housing initiatives and such. She had some important things that the county is wondering, how they'll be impacted as well. So I can reach out to her and ask her if she'd like to put something forward to them as well.
I think the more voices, the better, certainly. Councilmember Bauer.
I'm curious to know if the Met Council, had an opinion on this yet. My research and my searching, I did not, although it was limited, to see if they did or not. Does anyone know?
So being a 17-member body, they take a while to make decisions on things. And actually, I would expect probably that the Met Council may not take an official position on the legislation. They certainly support affordable housing, and as I was noting, they have things that are under their control that they do to try to encourage it to the extent they can, especially density. You know, and I should say it's not just about affordable housing in terms of density for the Met Council. The Met Council is also looking at efficiency of delivery of services and, you know, sewer and water and things like that. And it doesn't make sense necessarily to have widely scattered development that doesn't meet the sort of the density needs to efficiently provide sewer services. So I don't want to put it all on affordable housing, certainly, but they do have a role in that. And my guess would be is that they probably wouldn't take an official position on it necessarily.
I was thinking that too, right? It really puts them in a conflict because the delivery of services will become incredibly challenging if you don't know what's coming.
And they're a state agency.
Right. Well,
So there's that too.
There's that.
Right? Does that provide guidance
Yeah,
to?
I think so. We'll follow the same procedure. We'll use this as the basis of the letter and tweak it as we see fit, and then pass it around for any other comments. And get that down as soon as we can. Thank you.
All right, we don't have any minutes this evening. Next is consideration of the consent agenda. No items have been removed from the consent agenda. Mr. Trudgeon, yes, excuse me. I thought I could get through that. Mr. Trudgeon, would you give us a brief description of those items on the consent agenda this
Certainly. In
evening?
control room, can I have the laptop show it up on the monitor? Thank you. The slide up here. Okay, agenda item 13A approves payments in the amount of $693,888.53. Item 13B approves one temporary gambling permit to the Friends of Roseville Parks for purse bingo at an event to be held on May 10th, 2025. Item 13C approves the purchase of a new unmarked vehicle for the police department, entry signage for the Harriet Alexander Nature Center, which will be paid by private donations, and payments for structural repairs of various sewer catch basins and manholes, which will be paid from the sanitary and stormwater sewer funds. Item 13D applying for a grant with the state of Minnesota to fund equipment to assist the police department in preventing auto theft and recover stolen vehicles. Item 13E approves entering into an updated joint powers agreement with the Ramsey County Violent Crimes Enforcement Team, or VSET. Roseville has been part of the JPA since 2005. Agenda item 13F authorizes entering into a memorandum of understanding with the 4 collective bargaining units with the Roseville Police Department, which covers the police officers, the sergeants, the lieutenants, and the deputy chief. The MOUs regard the police department's renewal of the recruitment and retention initiatives and incentives with each union through December 2025. These recruitment and retention incentives are the same as what were approved in 2022. This action simply makes the incentive available through the end of this year. Agenda item 13G approves another memorandum of understanding, this time with LELS 112, the collective bargaining unit for the Roseville police officers. This MOU updates the union contract language in recognition of the changes of how the city manages off-duty and contracted overtime that was approved by the council on February 10th. Agenda item 13H approves the 2025 wellness program for employees. The funding for the wellness activities come from our insurance pool, and we are eligible to receive up to $12,800 as reimbursement for our wellness activities. Item 13I approves reclassifying the accounting tech 3 position, which handles all the city's payroll, to a position entitled payroll accountant. It was recently discovered that the position should be reclassified due to a larger scope of the position's responsibility and accountability than was originally accounted for in the scoring system. And we also looked at the market for similar positions. Once approved, this change will represent about an additional $4,336 in additional costs and will be covered by the existing finance department budget. Item 13J approves an easement agreement for a pathway at 403 Wagner Street. While the right-of-way for this location adjacent to 403 Wagner Street was approved way back in 2004, subject to a pathway and utility easement, it was recently discovered that the proper paperwork at the county was never filed to record that vacation. This action will approve the easement agreement for the trail and utilities and finalize the vacation at Ramsey County. Item 13K approves the professional services agreement with KLM Engineering to provide telecommunications review services for the city. KLM will provide the city's guidance. Will provide city guidance on lease agreements, structural analysis, and inspection in regards to the city's telecommunications towers. The cost of these services are captured as part of the escrows we collect from the permitting process with telecommunication firms. And then finally, 13L approves a resolution which approves the summary ordinance to implement the local sales tax to fund the construction of the Maintenance Operations Center. As you may recall, on the 17th of March, we only had 3 council members, and while we passed the official ordinance adopting the implementation of the sales tax. The summary ordinance is what's something we passed to minimize our costs in publishing. Required at least four members' support, so we're bringing that forward tonight and asking for unanimous support for that as well. And that is a very lengthy consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion from the council on the consent agenda this evening?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Shorter, seconded by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved or accepted. That brings us then to the future agenda review. Mr. Trudgeon, once again.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a break, no meeting next Monday. We'll start again with 3 meetings in April. So on the 7th, we're scheduled to just begin a discussion with the council about massage therapy establishments and perhaps having a cap on there. We have a couple other minor issues, but one thing that I think we're ready to go is a closed session for my performance review. I've been meeting with the subcommittee, and they can certainly add to it, but I think we're at a point where we're ready to share the information and have the discussion. So we'll plan that at the end of the meeting on the 7th. Reminder, on April 9th, there's ethics training that officially starts at 6 o'clock. There is some new commissioner training prior to that. Also, the mayor and I do chair and vice chair training at 5:30 as well. Go about an hour. Ms. Tierney will again present us with a very awesome presentation about ethics.
No pressure.
So stay tuned. And as you know, council members, commission members, department heads, and assistant department heads are all required to attend that training. April 14th, we have an EDA meeting, and this will hopefully put to bed the housing needs assessment study, and then we can move on from that and look what we're going to do in the future. And then we also, on the 14th, more in a work session format, talk about the strategic planning goals and success indicators. That's kind of the next step we're working on. Department has a meeting twice a week. It's very hard to do in March when everybody's on spring break, but we're trying to work around that the best we can, and we're making some really good progress. We find that each time we're getting better and better at doing it and becoming more efficient. So we will present that all to you, and that's just the next step, and then we'll continue to keep working on even more specifics from there. But we want to check in with you so you know that we're making progress on it. And that's all I have for future agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any questions on the future agenda? Are there any council member initiated items for future meetings? Councilmember Strawn.
So as you may or may not know, on Thursday of this week, the city of Falcon Heights is deciding whether or not to implement a temporary meter parking situation during the state fair on their city streets. So at that time, they will determine, and it looks like according to my sources, that they will pass this ordinance, which will require a $25 fee for any car parked on Falcon Heights streets in a certain area, which does come up and adjoin parts of Roseville. So I think I'd like to, based on that decision that's made on the Thursday of this week, for us to at least have a conversation if we want to amend our parking restrictions on the street. People are pretty crafty and not wanting to pay for parking, and we have streets that come close, are right abutting these, where people, so if we were going to go a wider span where we have single-sided parking to make sure that emergency vehicles, or if we wanted to, they're expecting several $100,000 in revenues based on this information. I'm not suggesting we take that in stride, but I do think we should be prepared and at least chat about it and make some educated suppositions on how that will impact at least certain parts of Roseville for this coming year, and then have maybe some metrics in place so that we know after this year if we need to make other changes based on how that goes. But it looks like they will go into place. So for the 12 days of the fair, people will not be allotted a city spot for themselves even. And so it will be this temporary meter system. So I would like to propose that when we meet again on the 7th, that we discuss the outcome of that. Obviously, if they don't pass it, we don't need to talk about it. But if they pass it, which it looks like they will, we discuss what impact and what response we would have for that.
Right. Is it possible, 7th and 14th both don't look like terribly busy agendas, so we could probably fit it on either one.
I think either is fine.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
I just want to make sure on the timing.
Yeah, I just think it'll be here before we know it, and I think it'll take some time to educate people if we're going to be changing the parking on our streets or what they are. But I know there's streets like Ryan between Hamlin and Snelling that normally doesn't have parking issues, but if the streets right up to it have pay parking, they may suddenly have an issue that's never been addressed before. So just making sure that we consider the parameters, and then by then we'll have a map of where they're planning on putting these in.
Great. Any other council member initiated items or council reports, announcements?
We do an
Councilmember
announcement.
Strawn.
I went to my first North Suburban Communications Commission meeting. Dan has graciously stepped down after 15 or more
1,000 years, yes.
15,000 years. He's like on the wall. They have his name. They asked for our support for the equal access to broadband bills, which were Senate File 2045 and House File 974. They indicated that they sent that to the city managers. But that as those go through, they felt that was important. And as a member of 9 North, that is an important initiative for them. They also have some really cool new equipment that they shared with us at the meeting. Sorry, Dan, it was really cool. Where they animate photos that they're hoping to provide access to for historical societies so that they can actually take stills and make them into video, which was really cool. And they also made a call for any city events that may be coming up that we might want to have put on their docket. They're kind of trying to create their schedule for the next 4 to 6 months, and they want to make sure that important events make it onto their roster so they can reach out to them directly or work in tandem with them, with our staff. Thanks.
Great. And I think we already have a legislative position in support of the general broadening of funding for that. So, and I think we did provide some sort of letter or something last year. I know I testified, but
Yeah, I'm not sure we did a
Yeah,
letter, but it's certainly
okay.
in our
yeah,
goals.
we should look and see if there's something maybe we can do in that regard.
I know some of the hearings started last week.
Yeah,
That
but
was Friday, I think.
Timing,
Friday,
yeah.
but I'm not sure that happened because I couldn't find a review of it. So I'm not sure.
I think I saw something from the league today that it did happen.
It did happen. Okay.
And it was laid over for inclusion in the omnibus bill.
Okay. Yeah.
As with everything.
Yeah, yes.
That's why they call them omnibus. All right. If there are no further items before the council in terms of future agenda, communications, reports, and announcements, the only other item on our agenda this evening is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Bauer to adjourn. No discussion on motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 9:02 p.m. Thank you, everyone.